guys, it's Flowergothic. We're recording an intro for my phone because I didn't like the one that I filmed 2 days ago, and I'm in the middle of transitioning equipment. Yay! So this is Why I Hate You by Onision, at least the parts I read. As of now, I have no interest in continuing it, but maybe one day I'll come back to it. Who knows? God knows, because I've had to sit through Reaper's Creek, and God, in a few days you will know how painful of an experience that was for me. Yay! But without further ado, here's all that I read of Reaper's Creek, filmed around March and April of 2020, which was right when Corona started. Remember that? I sure do. Anyway, enjoy. Thank you. Bye.
Hey gang, it's Flowergothic, and damn, I did not expect to return to Onision so soon. So if you'll recall, back in February when I finished reading Stones to Abigail, I said it would take me a little while before I read This Is Why I Hate You, the second Onision book. I originally intended to read it either in September or when Onision finally got arrested, whichever came first. However, coronavirus. COVID-19 has basically placed me in a semi-quarantine. The city of Houston might be going on lockdown any day now, so I'm making the most of the situation I can, and I've decided that the best thing to do is to read a book. And so we're going to be reading Onion Boy's second book, This Is Why I Hate You, which I actually have very little information about. I haven't read like a single summary for this. All I know it's about a guy and something about the Air Force something. So, unlike Stones to Abigail, I'm going to be looking at this completely blind. Let's begin! Introduction. My name is Arthur Gale. Because as we know, the best books start off with the character saying their name. Like, my immortal and the legendary Ebony Darkness Dementia Leaving Ray. Wahaha! I am a 17-year-old in high school. Where else would you be? I can't even think of anything funny for that. I am starting this journal because I feel like no one knows me for who I am. My father is intentionally oblivious to the things I've been going through. It's impossible to have a normal human-to-human conversation with him. I feel like this is how people feel when they're talking to Onision. Not that I'd want to talk to that balding, delusional, self-loathing freak. Because as we know, well-rounded characters are few and far between in Onision's writing. I have no one to talk to, no one to hear me and not automatically say something dreadfully idiotic in response. This reality leaves me with a void in my life. Like the gaping void in Onision's chest where human emotions should be. I need to vent to someone, but the problem is I hate most everyone I've ever met. Is this just James from Stones to Abigail, just repackaged as Arthur Gale? Like, I know Onision's a bad writer, but I didn't think he'd be lazy to the point of recycling his protagonists. How do you express yourself to people when you don't feel they're worth the time? By ranting about it on Twitter, like a normal human. They wouldn't even begin to understand me if I tried. If I even began to try and explain what was going on in my mind on a daily basis to the average person, I would be thrown in a padded cell. Probably rightfully so. How do you express yourself to people when they're living in an entirely different world than you? They're living a goddamn lie, I can't help it, because they're barely as self-aware. still getting the James vibes here. Because again, this is how I acted and thought when I was 12. This book will serve as my friend to talk to, my trash to dump my garbage in, and if anything, this is proof the days I endure even existed, instead of like cell phone data, because this was written in like 2013 if I recall correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. This is my escape from the prison of thoughts that scream to get out of my head on a regular basis. I would speak my thoughts aloud to others, but I don't want them to give me another reason to hate them more than I already do. Brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department. I can handle criticism, lies, but stupidity is contagious. I'll have nothing to do with them. For the sake of not boring anyone who may read this, I'm going to do my best to explain the events in my life in a somewhat hybrid format. This will be half a normal book and half a normal journal. Why is he treating the journal like it's a human being? Is he that deprived of social contact? Jesus Christ. I realize I am insignificant. Me acknowledging that is somewhat ironic, considering I feel most everyone I encounter is beneath me. Kinda sounds like the real Onision speaking here. I ask you, knowing my life is so meaningless, what does that make the lives of people who have not once stopped and questioned their existence? Who are these meaningless flesh puppets? What the fuck? These wasted human shells born like cattle only to wither like fruit and die as if they never existed to begin with. What is fame other than the recognition of a pointless person by a bunch of other pointless people? We succeed in life. Why? It all ends in death. It's all forgotten. Your massive house, your nice car, your trophy wife. What? It's all temporary. Once it's gone, you're left with little more than memories. How do we find ourselves willing to continue living considering the true nature of our pathetic existence? First of all, final wills and testaments exist, so maybe the celebrity's descendants can get the nice house and the nice car, maybe even the trophy wife if they manage to score. And second of all, wow, Onision, you're so deep. You're so cool and deep. Oh my god. Something I find incredibly laughable is we still manage to have a self-esteem. We still feel like our opinions matter. And some are so foolish as to even write their thoughts down like I am now. Why? I am a walking, talking contradiction. Well, at least you admit it. The real point of me writing is to keep myself from combusting. If for some reason someone reads this outside myself, almost as if this is a journal book, maybe they will feel the same as I do. Maybe they're also sick of most everyone they've encountered. We are a curse this planet! But fortunately for Earth, our presence here will no doubt be brief. You, reading this now, admit your life is meaningless and admit you don't matter. My life has meaning and I do matter. Fuck you, I do what I want! If you have any truth within yourself at all, just admit that you can be replaced and the world won't even blink as your body rots. Take an honest look at our species. Admit humanity is a disease to this planet. Admit what we are and wonder why you even bother trying! I confront our fragile and overrated existence every day. I see people smile and I feel sick. Because they're happy and I'm not. Just think of the obsession a person must have with their own importance to think the creator of our infinite universe has time to grant their little wishes. Those same wishes are rarely about anything bigger than their little superficial lives. You're pretending you're talking to an all-powerful being, and all you're asking is that they allow you to pass your math test or score the winning touchdown? As an atheist, I don't talk to an all-powerful being. You should be ashamed of yourselves. You're not just unforgivably insane for believing some magical being is listening to your every thought. That's not enough stupidity for you. No, you're so dumb, you use this imaginary connection to focus on your idiot little life over real issues like world peace, ending hunger, and generally making anything outside your own mundane life better. I'm done talking for today. You know my name. You know my obvious pessimism and disdain for society. Oh, really now? Most importantly, you know there's a good chance, even if this book is someday published, even if you're its biggest fan, there are likely hundreds of ways in which I hate you. And that was the introduction. Jesus Christ, that's the longest introduction, but that's all for today, because I'm already, over 10 minutes now, so, see you next week when I read Chapter 1. There is no point! Goodbye. Mwah. Alright, hey gang, it's Flowergothic. Welcome to Chapter 1 of This Is Why I Hate You by Greggy Poo, aka Onision, aka Onion Boy. Okay, I'm a little tired today, so let's just jump right in. Hopefully this will wake me up before I work out tonight. This quarantine has just gotten us all... So let's read. Chapter 1. There is no point! My house is a 2-story cliché suburban abomination. My room is painted white, like every other room in this goddamn country. Well, my brother's room is painted blue, I think, and my room's not pure white, it's just off-white, really. So you're wrong. My father doesn't allow me to tack posters directly to my walls, so my room is lined with massive picture frames containing my morbid and gothic posters within. I mean, tacking posters directly to your walls once you reach a certain age is tacky as fuck. I wouldn't do that in this day and age. I would rather preserve the poster. I was sleeping in my annoyingly well-lit room early in the morning when my father, Jerry... Please just let it be Jerry Smith. He turns into a pickle. It's the most hilarious goddamn thing I've ever seen. Woke me up to go to school. It was the same old routine. After the usual vegetarian breakfast he forced me to eat, he had nothing but fake meat, fake milk, and fake vegetables in the fridge at all times. We were off to my school. Jerry drives me on a daily basis because he insists he loves me and I quote, no Lindfelt, what the legit actual McCormick fuck, member will ever ride a yellow bus. You see, he's completely different from James. James rode the school bus, Arthur doesn't. Huh? As if he's a hero. If anything, he's a villain, constantly subjecting me to his daily 10-minute sermons about how his beliefs in Middle Eastern deities like God and angels will lead me to a better life. I mean, he fed you a healthy breakfast and is driving you to school. He doesn't seem like a villain to me so far. Sure, Dad. Tell me more about how your love for a made-up super god has brought you so much happiness. Every time you do, I just think of all the atheist millionaires who accomplish more for them than your magical invisible deity ever will for you. Yes. But let's not forget the Christian millionaires like the owner of Hobby Lobby whose wife had a vision from God, so therefore the Hobby Lobby stores must remain open, even when there's a protective stay-at-home order in my city. As always, school started painfully early. We were always on the road before any other cars, so the beginning of every day felt like we were living in a post-apocalyptic world of death and desperation. You know, without the well-written storyline. I rarely talk to anyone during my classes and even less after they're over. More often than not, I feel like talking to most people is like trying to bond with a child. You wrote this in 2013, right? When you had a child? Why would you write this as a man with a child? Essentially, no matter what we do, that's basically what a lot of us are. Children surrounded by children. Even most adults are just oversized kids. I mean, I've been to the Crayola restaurant before and the menu said big kids menu, so clearly adults are just big kids. So frail, terrified, confused, and desperate. The nature of her daily behavior, spelled the European way for some godforsaken reason, is that every little move we make around other people can change someone's life. That change can lead to another change, creating potential to domino into larger events until before you know it, someone's crying or walking into a post office to paint the walls with blood while texturing the paint with brain matter. What the fuck is wrong with you? Humans are horribly sensitive creatures. It's as if our greatest accomplishment in creating a language with distinct and consistent words was giving ourselves another reason to hate each other. Think about all the people you think are morons. Now think about what percentage of those people you hate because of the things they say alone. That's exactly my point. Without verbal language, how do you start a racist, sexist, or homophobic group? By using nonverbal language, you fucking idiot! How do you organize a war? How do you cause wide-scale suffering if you don't have language like we have? Verbal communication is key to committing genocide. You want world peace? Stop participating in this pointless social game. Commit yourself to silence. Statistically, you likely have nothing valuable to say anyway. So we're on the first chapter, and so far there is no plot. It's just Arthur Gregg yelling at us about his beliefs. A wonderful example of a dreadfully desperate human being would be this kid named Chris in my first period class. This dysfunctional failed abortion, what the legit fuck, is constantly trying to cause trouble with the teacher, other students, and his surroundings in general. His behavior, again spelled the European way, even though you're a fucking American, is no doubt a response to his mother never paying attention to him at home while girls at school treat him like he's a disease with legs. It's people like Chris you could say only a few words to and his entire life would crumble right before your eyes. The fact that people give so much power to the made-up words we use on a daily basis would be laughable if it wasn't so tragically and horrifically pitiful. I've noticed for some time Chris has an adorable little neck. I imagine if I wrapped my hands around his throat using only half my strength, I could very easily snap his neck. Brought to you by the Department of Redundancy. What the fuck?! I wonder if he'd still find value in his efforts to cause disruptions wherever he went. Or, as I slowly broke the bones in his body, would he feel remorse? Would little Chris finally see what a waste of oxygen he is and finally do something meaningful with his meaninglessness? No, he's an idiot, and will one day die. An idiot. By my hands, because I've just confessed that I want to commit murder. I am incredibly satisfied with my choice to avoid conversation with others as much as possible. One primary example of people I rightfully treat like the human abominations they are is this big-breasted ditzy girl named Jessica. I swear to God, this is just Rick and Morty. She has the personality and looks of someone destined for the pole. In other words, she's the physical embodiment of what every other generic guy on this planet desires in a woman. Thing is, the very same people who desire her would never want to have children with her. She could never take care of a baby, not when she herself has the brain of an 11-year-old girl with just a hint of princess syndrome. Well, I mean, tell that to Morty and he'll kick your nuts. Princess syndrome, because we need this to be explained to us because apparently the wording wasn't already obvious. A snotty, self-absorbed female freak who practically craps her own pants every time she sees her reflection. Someone with princess syndrome can be found constantly treating everyone else like they owe her copious amounts of compliments and sincere gratitude for simply being allowed to exist within 50 feet of her. Brought to you for no reason whatsoever. To summarize, add precious, well-endowed Jessica to the pile of people I classify as wastes of space. Amazingly enough, Chris and Jessica were the only two people who actually stood out to me today, which is why I talked about them at length. Most of the people in my first class were well-behaved, which is likely due to the fact they remained silent. Today, not a single student expressed an uneducated opinion based on their naturally uneventful and inexperienced lives. It was refreshing, too, see, and left me plenty of time to focus on our soon-to-be diabetic teacher. A man who clearly wants to be teaching us as much as a pig wants to be locked away to slaughterhouse. At lunch, I found myself enjoying the usual routine of throwing away my father's vegetarian sack lunch. Rude. And shelling out quarters I stole from his vacation fund jar to buy the usual ham sandwich. I often ate that in something called chocolate nutty bars, which are basically peanut butter smeared on wafers covered in chocolate. Those foods are some of the few things I enjoy about life. You could say, "Wow, Arthur, you make fun of fat people a lot. What about your own health?" I'm pretty sure that shit was already covered in that one high school interview. Actually, I'm in great shape. Until I'm not, I'll keep eating what I like. Now, before I continue, I'd really like to point out how stupid my father is with his diet. I'm on the topic and I'm living about it at the moment, so here we go. Because we already have had 2 fucking tangents in this chapter. We could go for a third. Third time's the charm. Am I right or am I right, gang? Dad, Jerry, whatever, you're a moron. On a daily basis, you preach about your religion, you're better than me, for following it. On a daily basis, you preach about your diet as if it's better than mine. Here's the thing, Dad, you're fat, not me. You're a bloated mess of a human being. You run for miles every other day and look at you. You're still an obese and grotesque simpleton. When fat people give me advice on my diet, what am I supposed to do with that? You eat nothing but carbs and are obsessed with pastries, which are made by milk that is not fake. You fucking moronic piece of shit. You think it's okay to have copious amounts of dessert at every meal just because you jog a little? You're twice my age but have the dietary logic of a preteen. You're acting like you're going to live longer just because you don't suck on the muffler of a car, and yet here you are sniffing paint. You got the same result because you traded one poison for another. Obviously your diet isn't working for you, but you still force it on me anyway? Have you ever thought about anyone's needs outside your own? Then there's your religion that you also force on me. You do this, of course. You have custody of me, so why not treat me like I'm your literal property? That's right, because from a legal standpoint, I'm essentially a slave who has to put up with your hypocrisies and delusions every day till I reach the magical made-up status you people call a legal adult. I find it hilarious that you are talking about how great your invisible superhero is when life is worse off than most of the other dads I've met. Your wife, my mom, is dead. You're miserable at your job, are loaded with debt, and the only kid you ever had was a son who hates you because you can't even be honest with him about who you are. You lie constantly about the things you've done in my past and instead just hide behind the mirage of forgiveness. On top of all this, you have the nerve to treat me like the life you live is superior? How damaged are you? Some thoughts. There is no fucking way this cannot be an exaggeration, because this sounds like an exaggeration. This sounds like the teenage bitch who's like, "You're not in control of me, Dad. You don't know my life. You don't know me." When in actuality, they take several sacrifices to make sure you're raised well and care about your health, because there are other reasons you can be fat. You dingus? I'm done ranting. Let's get back to my day. After lunch, I went to my remaining 2 classes and waited for my dad's double-chinned girlfriend to pick me up. As you probably guessed, she too is a vegetarian. Noticing a pattern here? Irony. She wasn't disgustingly obese, but her neck was. I call it frog syndrome. The great thing about my dad's girlfriend is that most times she shuts up. She rarely sends a single word my way, which is refreshing. It's as if she knows I'm a human proximity, mine, and will explode on anyone who makes a wrong move around me. It could be that, or the fact she knows she is nothing compared to my real mom. Every day my dad likely sees her as second best. What a miserable, self-loathing person she must be. Once I got home, I walked up to my bedroom, closed the door gently, thanks to former complaints from my father about slamming the door, and put on my headphones to blast my favorite music. That was my day. Just a simple sample of my typical irrelevant first world white boy life. So, we finished the first chapter. There is still no plot. It's just a lot of complaining. Okay, I guess that's the end for today. See you next time. Bye! Mwah. Hello, gang, it is I, your goth mother, Madame Goth Flowergothic, and welcome to Chapter 2 of This Is Why I Hate You by none other than Onision. Unlike most of my readings of Onision's work, I'm actually doing this during the daytime because I kind of want to get this over with, because so far nothing has happened, and we're, 9 pages in out of 136. Let's get a move on, people! And also I need a break from yelling about how Kingdom Hearts is not as good as I thought it was back when I was 10, so, without further ado, Chapter 2, A Need to Breed! It's been weeks since I last wrote in this journal. Alright, good. For once you recognize nothing interesting happens in your life. You could assume this was due to laziness, but I rarely suffer from that degenerative disease. And like Onision, who is so lazy, he just recycled James into Arthur! Here's the thing. I don't know what being unmotivated even feels like. I don't have the ability to sit around and loathe the idea of doing anything outside of wasting my time being lethargic. If something in my life needs to be done, I do it. I won't complain. I won't self-pity. I will do what is necessary. This journal has not been a priority to me till now. Okay? So actually give us a story then. My mother, Sarah Gale, brought to you for no reason whatsoever, taught me from day one to never feel sorry for myself, to never give up on what I believe in, and to never miss a positive opportunity when it's sitting right in front of me. She taught me a lot of things before she died. I could not be more grateful for her. The fact that she's dead in place of my father is a reality that drives me insane every time I'm reminded of it. You don't understand me, Dad. I wish Mom was still alive, and you can stop forcing your vegetarianism on me. It took him all of 3 weeks to get a girlfriend after she died. He was in the hospital with her every day, talking about how much he loved her. Then she died. And what seemed like only a few blinks later, he literally got with a nurse who was working at the same goddamn hospital my mom drew her last breath in. Well, when someone you care about dies, you can do some really weird shit, okay? Okay? Her seduction of my freshly widowed father is one of the many reasons I hate that bleach blonde double-chinned freak. They're still together? After, what, 8 years? 9 years? 10 years? Random hookups usually don't last that long. Huh? You could say she just felt sympathetic towards my father, having just lost his wife. You might believe she just wanted him to feel better, but you would be wrong. If she really cared about doing what was right, she would have given him time. Instead, she took advantage of a desperate man in a tragic situation. You're not my real mom. You're not my real mom. You wouldn't understand me. I hate you, stepmom. You're such a bitch. Manipulative bitch. Seeing this woman's limp legs dangling from the side of a dumpster with garbage stains smeared down her calves would disturb me less than seeing her kiss my father. She's an invader. She's the destroyer of what little piece I had left in my own home. Moody bitch. Jerry is already talking about her moving in soon. After years? How long have they been together? Like, wait, when did the mom die? Which means I will become even more forgotten in this household than I already am, even though there are just 2 people in this household, including a loving father. Literally, sports are of greater importance to Jerry than me. You got that right, another fat American white guy who watches sports, who just happens to be a vegetarian. They're a dime a million. My father is a wart on the backside of the human species. I'm superior to my father because I don't like sports. That's how it works, right? Right? Speaking of sports, I fantasized about a massive weapon going off in the middle of a major sporting event. What the fuck? Sure, it would be so incredibly sad. The horror, I know. Meanwhile, from a logical standpoint, the world wouldn't really suffer much, losing a condensed population of wasted and aimless lives, aka the millions of sports fans infesting this planet. You have jobs and families and people they love. You bitch! Those tiny insects gather together, watching one half-brain-dead man throw a ball to another brain-damaged man just so he can reach a made-up and meaningless goal. For what purpose do people professionally play sports? For entertainment? So they could collect millions of dollars yearly until their knees give out or their head gets cracked open? Then what? The majority of professional football players go bankrupt after they retire. Okay. The son of a woman my mom used to work with is most likely going to go into professional football. And he definitely deserves it. He's a super talented athlete who has been training since childhood. It's not really a brain-dead pursuit, Onision. I personally don't care about sports, but it's just because it's not my thing. It's other people's thing. It's just not my thing, okay? There's still a lot of effort that's put into it. Okay? What was it all worth? Would you not trade your memories for a body that isn't broken? It's just a game of numbers. There's no real depth, and it's so simple. The mere lack in intelligence or creativity is why so many generic and useless minds gravitate towards it. My college-educated parents watch sports a lot. Are you saying they're useless? Tired of getting confused by the complex reality of human existence? Here, monkey, watch sports! Then if you won't have to think anymore. And while you're at it, drink a beer! That'll dumb down your potential to do anything worthwhile with your time. Oh, fuck you! But some madman setting of a weapon, my bad, in a stadium. What does one insect killing a bunch of other insects really accomplish? Mass murder and tragedy. Nothing. There will always be more bugs to fill the gap, to continue the endless infestation and consumption of all the world's natural resources. I could hate the people in this world and take satisfaction in the thought of them dying. But I remain unwilling to do anything about their lives, as there is simply no point. Our lives are all pointless. Then why are you spending this chapter ranting about sports? To end a life is no easy task. You can pull a trigger, and in the physical sense, that's one of the simplest things you can do. But I'm not a sociopath, I say as I fantasize about a bomb going off at a sporting event. I'm not so stupid. I can't see what a coward I am. I struggle with my will to live as is. Spilling blood on my hands would only give me another reason to duct tape a plastic bag around my head and walk off the ledge of a building. My life is so pointless and makes me sick. Living in general is pointless, but dying serves no purpose either. So what do? Of course I follow the pack and wait till the clock stops ticking. None of this is why I'm updating my journal. Ironically, despite my murderous imagination, I have managed to find myself in a completely contradictory position. The truth is, I've recently started dating a girl at school, named Ashley. I know what you might be thinking. Arthur, you've done nothing but hit on the entire human species up to this point. Why would you date one of them? Yeah, this came out of nowhere. What the fuck happened? The honest answer is she clearly likes me and I'm available. Ashley has been in my third period class for some time now. There's a reason she's laughed at every other thing I've said in the class. It's more than evident she likes me because I rarely talk, and when I do, what I'm saying isn't funny, but yet she still finds amusement in me in every other sentence and regularly smiles at me. Ashley is a good-looking girl. She's pale-skinned, short, brunette. I really like her smile too. If that wasn't enough, my body, like most of every male body on this planet, demands I be physical with someone, so why not her? This is the human condition. We build illusions around our lives, love, friendship, and family. We think we take part of these aspects of life because we want to, as if any of it is truly a product of authentic free will. I mean, we all know that it's not really free will. We've seen Inside Out! If I were a robot that had the ability to learn and reflect on my existence, I might have a chance at free will. Without desires or bodily influences, me choosing to be a someone despite there being no clear advantage to my programming, operations, or physical body, I could argue the connection with them was legitimate. Now humans? We don't choose to be lonely or to have these desires, so how can we pretend free will was ever an option? Fuck you! Free will is the ability to act on one's own discretion. Discretion is the ability to decide what should and should not be done. Brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department. How can you make your own decisions when really your body is most always doing that for you? If I had free will, I could choose to be gay. I could choose to be happy when I looked in the mirror. I could choose to enjoy life to its fullest, but I can't. I have a war going on in my mind, likely because I'm 17 and am no doubt rapidly developing, mentally. Teenagers like me are key examples of these influences destroying our free will. They leave us in shackles. Most of us are too stupid to know they're there. I would admire their bliss if it weren't paired with their undeniable mental inferiority. Ah, boy. I guess this is another view on how Onision views society? Goddamn, he's a fucking sociopath. Ashley is a product of my imprisonment. I literally have millions of little potential human lives screaming within me to impregnate her as soon as humanly possible. What the fuck? If we were to reproduce, I would no doubt love, quote-unquote, the children she produced. This is, of course, because if I didn't love them, then they would be less likely to effectively survive. If our species collectively lost love for children, our species itself would begin to die off. We would leave our children in the streets to die. We wouldn't feed them or at times even risk our safety for them because we weren't pre-programmed to care. Free will? It's a joke so ridiculously personal, you can't even laugh. All most of us do is pretend we never got slammed with the reality of our true condition so we can continue that believing the lie that is freedom. You reading this right now will think about your little life in response to this information. Not really, no, I just want there to actually be a story, but no, it's just 14 pages of rants. You may even admit how insignificant it is, but what will you do then? Nothing. You'll barely remember these words in a week, maybe even as soon as 12 hours from now. We do this so we can continue existing without disrupting seemingly endless years worth of evolution. You don't think there was a failsafe put in your brain to deal with the possibility that you might actually realize one day it's all for nothing? We're just animals, that's a fact. We're holding out in hopes that someday we will evolve into something that might actually offer value to the universe. Aside from being self-aware as to how trivial and generic my increasing feelings for Ashley are, I've already begun to gratify myself to her. I regularly imagine unleashing inside her, having kids with her, and I actually feel authentic admiration for such an outcome. Sometimes I think about her begging me to impregnate her. That mere motion ignites arousal in both my body and mind. Okay, Onision, we know you have a breeding kink. Can you please shut up now? I'm such a puppet of biological programming, and so are all of you. Ashley's voice is what I can easily enjoy listening to for some time. Her facial proportions are beyond sufficient, and she's generally healthy, likely more so than me. So Arthur, tell me about this broad that you've gone with. Well, her facial proportions are beyond sufficient and she's generally healthy. Oh yeah, that sounds like a good broad. Does she have a good chest circumference? What I like most about Ashley is that she has very few beliefs just like I do. You may ask yourself as to how I could say I don't have many beliefs, but it's pretty clear I've been expressing a number of opinions since the beginning of this journal. In fact, that's all you've been doing. The blunt truth is most everything I say, the activities in my life and my mentality are all in some way based significantly on facts and logic. Facts and logic are the enemy of beliefs. The more you base your beliefs on facts, the fewer traits they share with opinions. The more I learn, the more what I believe turns into what I know. Now, before I end this chapter, I'd like to mention something I went through late last week with Ashley. Finally, some plot. There's this guy, John. He hangs out with the jocks at our school, so we know he's bad. I'm fairly certain I'm going to beat the living hell out of him due to what Ashley recently told me about him. According to her, during school she was walking to her next class and he put his hands on her hips to stop so they could talk. He didn't have anything much to say to her, so it was obvious that what he was doing was purely inspired by perverted intentions. He's a teenage boy going through a lot of physical changes, but that's no excuse to put your hands on a woman. Now I realize how primitive it is for me to mark my territory, so to speak. It is also primitive to try and solve your problems with physical fights, but that's not why I'm going on about this. Many human beings are saturated with violent and perverse thoughts, men especially. On average, the male gender regularly desires copulating with other human beings. What the legit fuck are you going on about, Arthur? These human beings are often females who appear to be capable of bearing children. They bleed on the birthing bed. Clearly. John putting his hands on my girlfriend was about more than the single physical act. He took his common desires and thrust them upon someone without an invitation. Essentially, he sexually assaulted her. Ashley did not ask for that. When I have violent or perverted thoughts, I express them in this journal. I just don't go out and grope people. There's no rational justification for it. I mean, you can rant about them online too. There are shitbag sites where you can do that. John made one of the biggest mistakes he'll likely ever make. He broke the wall of his civility and turned his hormone-driven thoughts into action. I feel I should show him what it's like when people don't keep their physical desires to themselves. My girlfriend was clearly not interested in being touched, but when violating her rights, he asked everyone who cares about Ashley to violate his. Thank you for giving me an excuse, John. The end. Jesus Christ, that was a long chapter. So far, Arthur has gotten a girlfriend. That is not Abigail, her name is Ashley. And not Abigail has been touched by a jock named John. So we're getting a bit of plot here, finally. So I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Mwah. Hello guys, it's I, your goth mother, Madame Goth Flowergothic, and welcome to Chapter 3 of Onision's This Is Why I Hate You. I'm in a really peppy mood right now because I just introduced the Queen Adam Lambert Ryan fanfiction to some friends of mine on Discord, and it brings back so many memories. Honestly, if you haven't read that yet, get on it, because it is like the best thing I have read on Wattpad, hands down, even like 2.5 years later. Because I am an edgy bitch, and I accept that. Anyway, without further ado, did I delete the tab? Fucking hell. I'm an idiot. Chapter 3. Crying at my feet! The last entry I made reflected on probably one of the dumbest things I was about to do. Obviously, getting yourself into a physical fight is a mistake when you look at the grand scheme of things, but to say I really had a fair choice in the matter is a joke. Just like the writer of this book. The sun hadn't even risen yet. The decrepit school was filthy and falling apart as if the walls were composed of maggot-infested flesh and bone. Like most public schools, because our public education funding is bullshit. As I approached John, I could hear the cracked tiles straining under my weight. It was immediately after first period had ended when we crossed paths. Only my path ended upon locating him. Brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department. I skipped class so I would not miss him walking to his next class. Brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department. I specifically chose the section of school where he had physically touched my girlfriend before. I said, "John, you ready to hurt?" John no doubt felt somewhat uncomfortable seeing these words come out of the lips of someone who looked like me. I intentionally wore a trench coat and all black that day. Somehow, inconspicuous, in these post-Columbine days. Normally, I didn't wear the coat, but I wanted to make myself appear much larger than I was. This was a strategy I learned from butterflies, creatures whose literal core design exists to scare away predators. Seemed fitting. This man-child clearly liked taking advantage of creatures smaller than him. John tried to act like everything was cool, as one of his jock friends was standing right by him. After taking a brief look into their eyes, it was obvious both of them thought their lives could be in danger. This possibility was especially apparent, considering all the things I might have been hiding under my long, black tattered coat. John swore at me, calling me the popular emasculating word goth kids are normally subjected to. Hey! Fortunately, I punched him in his throat seconds after he spoke it. Now, I realize punching someone directly in the throat can do extensive damage to a person's neck. Neck damage carries the possibility of preventing further breathing, however, a punch to the head or even between the legs can kill a man. The truth about our bodies is sad, but it's still reality. We humans are sensitive creatures. The blow I delivered to his throat shocked John's jock friend. He looked like he wanted to help John, but I screamed, threatening to murder him, and he backed off. like a normal person would do. I think I specifically said, "I'll stab you in the jugular and watch you bleed me, Ted." It was a mouthful, but John was busy gasping for air, so I had time. After John fell to the ground, I stood by, confidently waiting for him to return to his feet. Students heard the smack of my fist against his neck, and my screaming from hundreds of feet away. Like wasps, they swarmed around us. We love a good fight, don't we? When John returned to his feet, brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department, I let him hit me a few times. I knew there was a good chance I would be expelled if I didn't make the fight look at least somewhat even. Once I was bored of my face being tenderized like the meat of a freshly slaughtered animal, I decided to break his arm. Okay. I didn't exactly break his arm in the way you'd expect. First, I placed my right leg behind his legs while simultaneously dodging a punch he had just thrown. I then wrapped my right arm around his already tender neck and applied pressure to send his body flailing backwards towards the ground. Now, as John free fell, I had to make sure to twist his neck so it would land on his stomach. This was absolutely essential for snapping his arm in two. I successfully placed him quite gracefully on the ground without a significant impact. I then placed my boot on the back of his head and screamed, "Are you a righty?" John refused to answer and I just struggled under my boot, so I went ahead and assumed he was right-handed. Immediately after, I grabbed his right hand, lifted it up, his arm following, of course, and used my right leg to stomp on his elbow as hard as I could. I imagined this was incredibly painful considering my right foot was still on his neck, which of course meant the full weight of my body was on one of his most vulnerable body parts. I really don't know how that would look in real life, so, The snap of his arm was rather loud, surprisingly so. I might just have felt arousal from how tremendous it— What the fuck? What the fuck is wrong with you? I might have just felt arousal from how tremendous it was. Something you don't know about me is that my mom didn't just teach me philosophical lessons. She didn't just teach me how to defend myself, but also how to destroy my enemies. With facts and logic. My mother no doubt didn't want me to use techniques she taught me without absolute necessity, but my mother is a better person than I am. Nothing gave me more satisfaction than watching John cry on the ground while grabbing his now inverted arm he used to touch my girlfriend. The other jock stared in horror at me. He couldn't even look at his friend on the ground! It seems he was paralyzed as he looked into my eyes, accompanied with a grin soaked in my own blood on my face. I spoke to John. "Congrats, coward. You didn't get stabbed." Then spit some of the blood conjured up by the beating I received on his brightly colored Letterman jacket. Why are these European spellings? Oh my god. Like, you're American. We all know you're American. Does this, like, take place in Canada or something? I don't know. After only moments into John letting out blood-curdling screams, the school principal erupted in angry screaming for the crowd to disperse. Principal Lehman. Oh my god, he's back! She radiated warmly in the back of my mind. As lunch approached, Principal Lehman's back! Oh my god, this is so great! Principal Lehman took a look at my face, and then a look at John grabbing his arm on the ground. I smiled at the principal and said, "Sorry about the mess, but don't worry, it's all my blood." Looking completely freaked out, the principal responded by screaming for me to go to the nurse's office and wait for him there. After an hour of waiting in a room in the nurse's office brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department, 2 police officers came to the room and asked me questions about what happened. They said that because of the extent of John's injuries that they were heavily considering taking me to juvenile hall. I then opened up my mouth in a way that likely appeared to be a grin to the officers. They seemed upset about this, but their premature emotions were corrected when I pointed to a missing tooth in my mouth. The loss of my tooth, in addition to the cuts and bruises on my face, were enough to convince them that the damages were mutual, especially considering it only took 2 strikes for me to defeat John, while he had struck me around 7 times! The officers understood that if I refused to do anything, John would continue hitting me, and by definition, despite me starting the fight, the action of breaking his arm was self-defense. What the fuck? I made it clear to the police that I was losing my grip on him, and that had I not done what I did, he would surely do my face even more damage than he already had. This argument was one of the most important aspects of justified self-defense. But let's get past the legal aspect of what I did and get right down to my raw intentions. Everything I did, everything I allowed to happen was simply me manipulating my way to getting away with destroying John. John can't play football this year. John's right hand won't be touching my girlfriend anymore. John is suspended from school. Unfortunately, I'm suspended twice as long as he is, thanks to the principal clearly seeing through what I did. I'm sure me smiling at him didn't help. On top of everything else, Ashley hasn't spoken to me since. It would be ridiculous if by beating up the guy who touched her, I lose her. But I suppose I didn't just beat him up. Our performance was devastating. Maybe I went too far. You did. Who am I kidding? I know I went too far. And that's probably going to be the only reflection Arthur's going to have in his character. If Ashley rejects me for this, it won't be crushing. There are many more women where she came from. There are many more of us. What a stark reminder that there really is no real value in our individual lives. Ah, Jesus Christ. Okay. End of chapter 3. Bye, y'all. Mwah. Alright, hey guys, it's Flowergothic. Welcome to chapter 4, I believe, of This Is Why I Hate You by Onision. And, Onision, if you happen to be watching this, I would greatly appreciate it if you stopped trying to copyright strike my channel. Thank you very much. Anyway, as you see, this is the laundry special because I just took, 3 loads of laundry out of the dryer, and I'm going to be folding them while reading. So, without further ado, let's begin. Chapter 4, Prayer, for the Poor. It's been a week since I went to school. Fortunately for me, my girlfriend has visited me at home a few times since. Honestly, there is very little distinction between James and Arthur at this point, because at this point, James was also suspended for punching a jock, for something respect all woman something. Ashley and I have made out a number of times. If anything, what I did to John brought us closer together in the long run. Well, good for you! A lot of people wonder why girls like jerks. Why are a lot of women into guys with attitude problems over the friend-zoned nice boys? Oh, I don't know. Why don't I let this male explain it to me? This shirt does not want to get folded. I'm trying to Marie Kondo my life, but this shirt... How are you supposed to fold long-sleeve shirts in the Marie Kondo style? I don't even need you for the next few months. Alright, you gotta fold one side towards the center. Fold the sleeve to fit it with the rectangle width. Fold the sleeve back. Flush with the edge of the rectangle. I think I've got it. I got it. Okay, moving on. If you appreciate reality over fantasy, it takes one look at the animal kingdom to figure out why girls often choose to be with guys who are insensitive and domineering. Well, fuck you too, you dingus! In nature, the lion that fights the hardest, the alpha male, he is the one that the lionesses mates with. The most aggressive and dominant animal is the one who spreads his genetics, not the submissive, nice alternative males. Yeah, the Chad! The Chad insensitive lion gets all the pussy instead of the virgin alternative one. Because, as we know, that's how nature works! Sometimes comparing ourselves to other animals can be ridiculous, as some connections are thin or entirely irrelevant. Like the Chad lions. I don't get why you're talking about the Chad lions. However, this is a case of what we are deep down. Who I am comes from the core of my being. I am an alpha, and will be till the day I die. Keep dreaming, Greg. Keep fucking dreaming. I say it every day. We are products of our configurations. We are controlled by how we were raised, our other childhood experiences, chemicals in our brains, and our bodies themselves. As soon as the majority of straight women stop being so attracted to the strongest and most ambitious males, I'll stop being one. Until alpha males are obsolete, my body has needs, and being angry at the world doesn't hurt my position. You know what I love? When a straight white male explains to me why I'm supposed to be attracted to chats. Fuck you. Now, since the day I was suspended from school, my father has had quite a few things to say. You probably guessed it. One of those things was that he was praying for me. You know what changes things? Changing them. It sounds stupid, but prayer does not equate to changing anything outside satisfying your need to feel like you accomplished something. Okay, I'm not a Christian, but isn't prayer supposed to, like, motivate you to work towards a change? I'm asking for my Christian buddies out there. I'm asking my Christian buddies, like, is that how prayer's supposed to work? Because I was raised without religion, so I really do not know. I do know, though, that Onion's assumption of it is grossly inaccurate. Prayer is often just the poor man's version of donating money to a cause. When you are incapable of something or too lazy to do anything proactive about a problem, get on your knees and make a wish. No, that's the one like equals one prayer thing that dominated Facebook in the early 2010s. Jesus Christ, that was almost 10 years ago. God, I'm old! That satisfies people for some reason. Everyone but those living their lives realistically. Other than praying for me, my father has been out of the house with his girlfriend a lot. This left me plenty of room to gratify myself almost constantly, using the sites he hadn't yet blocked on his computer. We get it, you masturbate to hentai 5 hours a day, you don't have to rub it in! It's easy to get around parent blocking. All I had to do is go to the least popular sites I could find, and bam, no filter. My father abandoning me for his girlfriend also offered the always welcome gift of being able to generally leave my room without worrying about being judged or lectured. He doesn't have to learn if he doesn't leave his room. Ashley told me the other day that John had to get surgery on the arm I broke. As a joke, I told my dad to pray for his arm to have a quick recovery, and he smiled, thinking I, for a moment, was actually supportive of his faith. I have no sympathy for you, Arthur. None at all. The real reason I asked my father to pray is because I know little to nothing he prays for comes true. If there is a God, he or she or it is making it a point to ignore him. Who knows? I could get lucky and John could be in for a long recovery. Okay, how are you supposed to fold boxers? The condo style. It's probably worse that I'm doing this on my lap instead of like a smooth surface. Okay, I think I did it right. Who knows? Okay. His recovery should offer him plenty of time to think about not touching women without their consent, because I, Onion, am the morally superior being in this reality. Somehow. I know this all makes me sound like a terrible human being, and I no doubt am on multiple levels, but you only know a fraction of the story. Even so, much of who I am and what I've been through, I likely will not tell you. ... Some things are just better off unsaid. Because that would make for an actually interesting story, huh? Anyway, that's the end of Chapter 4, surprisingly. So, tune in next time when we read Chapter 5, Rejected and Aroused. Bye-bye. Mwah. Hey gang, it's Flowergothic. Welcome to Chapter 5 of Gleggypoos. This is Why I Hate You, his second magnum opus. And welcome to Part 2 of the Flowergothic is Folding Her Laundry special. I've gotten a little more laundry done, so without further ado, let's fold some clothes and read some words. Yeah, that sounds right, right? Chapter 5, Rejected and Aroused. Cold wisps of air filled my darkened, decayed school on my third day back. Jesus Christ, how long were you suspended again? Like 2-3 weeks? I don't know the rules in Washington for striking children. So I'm just gonna guess like 3 weeks, for the sake of simplicity. This place is so pathetic. I wondered if they ever planned on fixing anything. Well, considering the shit budget public schools normally have, I'd guess no. What would it take to get things repaired? A ceiling caving in on an entire class of students? Would that be enough? Probably enough to start a GoFundMe about it. Every other person at school has been looking at me nervously for the past few days. The past 3 days I've been back. Today, their looks could be in response to the fact I painted half of my face like a skeleton. Why? That's stupid and probably against dress code. It could also be that I wore the same trench coat I had when I broke John's arm. Why would you do this, you stupid motherfucker? I didn't even wash my own blood off of it yet. Why? What the fuck is wrong with you, you fucking psychopath? It could also be the silver tooth I got to replace the one John knocked out of my face. Should I care why I've become a bigger outcast than I was before? Do any of their opinions or even their lives matter? Because of our school's dress code, I was called into Principal Lehman's office in the middle of my first period class. I'm pretty sure it was my fat, pathetic excuse for teacher, Mr. Hanson, who... Wait a second. Is this supposed to take place at the same school Stones to Abigail took place in? Cause there was also a Principal Lehman in there. There was also a Mr. Hanson in there. Are you that much of a lazy, pathetic fuck, Onision, that you couldn't even be bothered to make up an entire new school with different teachers, different plot lines, different characters? Did I say different characters already? I don't care. The point is, you're a lazy writer and you should be ashamed of yourself, you pathetic, moronic piece of ass! I saw him mumbling on the phone just after I walked in. It must have been the principal. No shit. Principal Lehman was sitting firmly upright in his retros chair, staring at me as I walked into his office. He asked me to close the door, so I did. I went to stand in front of his desk and he asked, "Are you a psychopath or something?" I'm pretty sure he is. I mean, he painted his face like a skeleton, he's wearing a bloody trench coat. I'm pretty sure there's something wrong with him. With a tightly bound facial expression, I replied, "A psychopath is someone who suffers from a mental disorder. I believe I'm rather sane. However, they also tend to express violent behavior, so I should be..." You fucking idiot. I've only been dress coded like once in my life, but even then, I know this isn't helping your fucking case. Principal Lehman didn't look happy with my answer, rightfully. His lack of amusement didn't surprise me. Lehman then said something who blew my mind, not you mind. Fuck. These clothes, they need to be folded. Your parents are religious. Your father in particular constantly judges every little thing you do. Your mom and him are extremely condescending and have little respect for what you have to say. You're expected to be their carbon copy, and when you say something they disagree with, they ignore you or pretend you're evil for having shared your views. He stared at me, waiting for my response. Oops. No one at the school is professional at all. Holy fuck. Has Onion ever been to a normal high school, had a normal high school experience in his life? No, I replied, automatically assuming I was lying. He said, "No, I've met kids like you 1,000 times. You're all the same." I replied again, "No, my mom is dead. She was the only good thing about my home life." Principal Lehman paused awkwardly with a look into the side. I expected him to apologize or show some kind of remorse for not being sensitive about my mom being dead. He cut my train of thought in half. "So why is your face painted like it's Halloween?" Did he really just ignore the fact that I lost my mom after all he said to me? "Arthur Lindfeld?" he asked. "My name is Arthur Gale," I replied. He smiled and said, "Arthur Lindfeld is the name on this paperwork in front of me. Arthur Lindfeld is your legal name. These papers also happen to be expulsion documents, and all you have to do is fill out an explanation for your expulsion and sign." Oh, man, that boy's just gotten roasted! And I did not fold these boxes correctly, fuck. His words left no room for my normal attitude to flourish. He had my complete attention. "Why do you have expulsion papers with my name on it?" I asked. "Are you a moron?" He replied, "Because you look like a psychopath, you act like a psychopath, and if I expel you the moment you do something I don't like again, I'm fairly sure I'll be saving you, the students at this school, a lot of trouble." Well, good on you for saving face. But, geez, get this dude a psychiatrist or something. Holy fuck. We both knew what he was implying. I looked like the kids that shoot up schools, especially the ones at Columbine. What the fuck? I would never kill people just because I didn't like them. Lies. Didn't you say, like, you wanted to kill some annoying kid in your class? Kevin the sea cucumber? I imagine it every other day, but that doesn't mean I want it to happen. Yes, it does. I hated feeling like I was comparable to someone who would play God with people who were no threat to anyone I cared about. It's one thing to defend those you love. It's another to hurt someone for absolutely no reason aside from your desire alone. I felt a heavy sickness in my stomach and sat down in one of the two chairs facing Principal Lehman's piece of crap desk. "So, I think you get the point. You can leave," Principal Lehman said literally after I just sat down. I stood back up silently and left the room. Principal Lehman screamed at me, rightfully, "And wipe off that makeup, kid!" I felt tears start to form in my eyes. I know, it's pathetic, but I wasn't in control. I'm used to being the strongest one in every room. Principal Lehman was bigger, louder, and had more power at his fingertips than I had ever had in my entire body. As I walked into the bathroom, I looked in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot, and I knew I was about to lose it, but I couldn't, because boys don't cry. I didn't want to allow my anger and sadness to conquer me. It would cause me to rip apart the bathroom, and I knew I would get expelled. I had to remove the face paint, or I would no doubt also risk my expulsion. I was overwhelmed, but I had to swallow it all and bury it deep. I'm just another moron. I'm just another victim of self-expression. Obsession, my bad. But at least you're being honest with yourself. I wanted to be around my girlfriend, to protect her at school. I wanted to graduate high school. I didn't want to be some dropout loser with no future. All these thoughts burned through my mind as I began to wipe the skeleton on my face off. My emotions finally managed to push tears down my cheeks. The water-soaked brown paper towel was so useless and tacky for makeup removal. It's the little things in life, ... that can make you snap. As a few tears fell, Chris from my first period class walked in. He immediately noticed me wiping my face. He smirked and scoffed. That didn't last long. I ignored him as I wiped the water and tears off my face. I didn't have the energy to imagine lopping his head off with a machete or throwing him off the top of the school roof onto cement head first. What the fuck is wrong with you? Why am I even surprised at this point? I didn't have the energy to hate, only self-pity, so I stood there silently and kept wiping my face. I was almost completely done wiping the paint off, brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department. By the time he came back out of the bathroom stall, he spoke to me again, saying, "Dude, not everyone is your enemy." True. I ignored him and finished wiping my face. "Whatever, man. I'm on your side," he said, obviously trying to befriend me. I replied under my breath, "No, you're not," and walked off. Oh, what the fuck is wrong with you, Greg? You are a weirdo. You are a psycho brat. As I returned to my first period class, because this all happened in 20 minutes, I could hear the other students trying to hold back their laughter. Their inconsistent breathing made it more than obvious what they were thinking. Their eyes behaved like whack-a-mole, darting in and out to get a glance at the freak. There were only a couple people who didn't seem amused by the fact my face was half red from having just removed the paint. It was some foreign kid who barely spoke English and someone who was clearly out of place there as I was, and only he didn't show it with his wardrobe. In fact, I barely saw him speak to anyone else since the day I got to class. The only peace I could find in that class, brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department, existed between the foreign guy who can't speak and the other kid who just chose not to speak. Coincidentally, those two are basically the only people I hadn't yet imagined killing at some point because, as we've established, I'm a fucking psychopath. There's no satisfaction in watching innocent people suffer. So does that mean you've imagined killing your girlfriend before? This leads to a lot of fucking speculation now, doesn't it, Greggy Poo? Greg Arthur, Greg Arthur, Greg? For the sake of keeping myself from losing it on the entire class and making a bigger joke of myself than I already was, I just focused on my bedroom and my plan to lock myself in it for the rest of the day once I got home. Chris was eyeballing me as he walked back to class, but that was short-lived as the bell went off before he could even get to his desk. What the fuck? At lunch later that day, I was sitting with Ashley and all her friends. I didn't have any friends of my own, so my only real purpose was to serve as Ashley's butt pad for her chair. As she sat in my lap, I found myself listening to what I always dreaded hearing. It was the offensively ignorant and clearly unexamined opinions of her brain-dead preppy friend. What the fuck? From their views on the president to what other students were wearing that day, I experienced, God, this writing's so bad it's making me jumble my words. Also, it's probably because I'm multitasking. I experienced an intense urge to walk around that table and stick a knife in the back of each of their thoughtless little heads. No doubt, introducing a metal blade to the back of their brain would increase their IQs at least a few points. It would be difficult for them to climb beyond the intellectual rock-bottom state they were already in. Rude. Ashley was the American poster girl and fit right in with the others. Naomi, still drowning in black clothing, created quite the eyesore at the lunch table. There was no explanation as to why Ashley was even hanging around with these people, aside from the likely possibility that she had a lot in common with them. With that, it was becoming more than evident to me that Ashley was only with me because she was attracted to my type. Aside from her calling me handsome from time to time and laughing at the observations I made, we seemed to have very little we could relate on. Gee, I wonder how. I spoke in a low tone to Ashley, asking her if she could dish the group we were in. She ignored me. So I said again, let's leave. Ashley, still sitting on my lap, acted like I said nothing at all. Finally, I spoke in a normal tone. Ashley, can't we ditch your loser idiot friends? Rude. They all stopped blabbing about their nonsense views of the world and stared at me. It was obvious Ashley prioritized being accepted by her friends over me, because she's a sane girl who doesn't like it when her boy criticizes her friends. Even to this point, she ignored me. I couldn't believe she was still acting like I said nothing, but I wasn't going to stick around. I was fed up. So I slid her butt into the chair beside me and stormed off. Ashley called after me as I left the cafeteria, and in response, I lifted my middle finger while continuing to walk away, because I'm a insensitive dirtass. The rest of lunch I spent sitting in front of the door to my next class. After an hour of getting home, I got a call from Ashley. She wanted to know what she could do to make things better between us. She insisted she didn't mean to ignore me, but how could she not mean to do that? Her actions or lack thereof seemed so blatantly intentional, especially since I screamed out loud that I didn't want to be around her idiot friends. Despite the implausibility of her position, I decided to give her a chance to fix things. A chance I thought held no promise. Dress up like your goth tomorrow, I said into the phone, because I'm a manipulative jerk who wants to control how my sexual partners look. You know, like a healthy relationship. Ashley was silent for a moment and then asked, "What do I wear?" I replied, "Wear all black clothes and dark makeup." She replied, "Okay." That's not how being goth works. That's not how being goth works. You're just being a dark, edgy bitch. I didn't believe for a second she was going to do it. I was fixed on this idea that she was only into me for one reason, and that an alpha male was pulling her away from her pack of cackling turkeys would only make her feel weak. Such an act would contradict her initial interest in me in the first place. Ashley's goal being security. She would show up dressed in her normal attire and give up on the lone wolf I naturally found myself to be. As the next day of school began, Ashley stood where she knew I'd see her as I walked in. Her hands were interlocked in front of her thighs, clearly uncomfortable and scared as she's been forced to dress in a way she feels uncomfortable with. Her butt was slightly perked out. I noticed this because she was wearing black tights. As her eyes came clearly into view, I could see her purple eyeshadow, plum-colored lipstick, and purple glitter on the black jean jacket she was wearing. I was overwhelmed by her gesture of loyalty and submission. I never wanted to physically dominate someone more than I had in that moment. I quickly walked up to Ashley and heavily kissed her as the other students passed us by. As her lips pulled apart for a moment, I said, "Thank you." She smiled and replied, "Guess I'm yours after all. Especially since I'm willing to change my looks so I can keep you." I laughed under my breath, and we continued kissing till the bell for first period rang. We hung out whenever we could the rest of the day, and spent most of lunch just talking and kissing, alone. Some people can still surprise me. It's all part of why I haven't found my place at the end of a rope just yet. So that was chapter 5. What the fuck is going on with this? Jesus H. Christ, what the fuck is wrong with you, Greg? Either way, I need to finish this laundry, so, bye for now. Mwah!
You like I love drinks like and smells like
Hey guys, it's me, Flowergothic, and I've had like a glass of red wine. I know I'm not really supposed to admit that I've had alcohol, but I've had alcohol. Fuck you, Texas state law! So we're going to be reading chapter 6 of Onision's magnum opus, or his second magnum opus. This is why I hate you! And forgive me for if I slur or fuck up, because the alcohol. So let's read chapter 6, exercise before exercise. And I'm pretty sure the alcohol is going to help me get through this shit faster. Oh, Christ. Ashley and I have been together a while now. I didn't write about the first time we slept together as I haven't felt compelled to update my journal. You know, despite the fact that I might have lost my virginity. That sounds kind of important, man. It happened a few weeks ago, and since then, many of my views and feelings have been, rightfully, put into question. Being with her was pretty amazing, actually. She's repeatedly proven her loyalty to me by, doing the things I tell her to do without having a smidgen of independent thought. Despite most people's better judgment, I've been very good to her. Lies for a while now. It's just most people see me as a freak. So why would she not follow suit because she's a submissive asshole to your abuse? I have too many reasons to believe Ashley's interest in me has reached beyond all my previous expectation. This is just another reminder of how little I know. The majority of my body and much of my mind is practically a carbon copy of most every other human who shares this planet with me. This growingly evident reality is part of why I'm writing in my journal list. Thank God! This means it's not gonna be like Atlas Shrugged levels of length and Atlas Shrugged levels of bullshit! The more I write, the more I realize how generic and pointless my thoughts are. Thank fucking God. Sometimes the most intelligent thing you can do is acknowledge you're an idiot. You're an idiot. I'm glad you recognize that. Ashley said she loved me the first time we slept together. We even stopped using a condom halfway through because, she doesn't care about the STDs or the pregnancies. She didn't pay attention in classes where we learned about the birds and the bees. I asked her if she wanted me to remove it, and she nodded silently, which of course means consent, bitch! bitches! Her decision was especially meaningful as it was her first time being with anyone. I felt honored, spelled the European way, for some godforsaken reason. Does this take place in Canada? I think it takes place in Canada. I don't know, and I don't care at this point. She was willing to be with me. The relationship we have, it goes against what I previously thought of human relationships. I believe practically every single relationship brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department was just a product of core programming. Maybe it still is, but I don't think that's how things really are in my case, 'cause I'm a special little snowflake. I'm a special little snowflake who knows the real meaning of love. I hope y'all guys are entertained at my expense. I know I sound gullible, more than ever really, but this feels so different. Just looking at the words I'm writing down makes me see what a fool I've been. All in all, I don't believe people wouldn't promote the drug of love if it weren't so intoxicating. Now I'm hooked, 'cause love is a drug. I read Delirium once, so I know love is a disease and we must get injections in the butt to be cured! Actually, I've never read Delirium. I knew some girls in middle school who read it, and it sounds like a shit novel because it was like the golden age of young adult dystopian. When Ashley and I are intimate with each other, it means something beyond what we're physically doing. We're losing ourselves in each other, pulling closer together as the world is simultaneously pushed away. Which I'm pretty sure is a sign of abuse, but it's Onision, so it's apparently supposed to be romantic. We've been physical so many times now, when we part ways it feels like she hasn't even left. I still feel her warmth, her shaved skin rubbing against my crusty, greasy skin. Fluids engulfing me as I thrust into her. You know, like normal people. She's making me feel more human than I thought I ever would. It was so strange. We wound up going all the way only a few hours after my dad left for the night. It was attending some church gathering, probably an orgy, judging by what hypocrites and whack jobs most religious people are. What orgy? Can I join the orgy, please? I haven't had sex in weeks. I need love and attention! But that's off topic. I told Ashley to come over shortly after he left, and she did. She knew we were going to go all the way. It was more than implied on both ends. When she got to my house, she was in her tracksuit with the school logo on it. Brought to you for no reason whatsoever. I'm not sure if you could possibly wear a more dorky outfit to see your boyfriend, but that's just Ashley, who's goth now if I recall correctly. She kept expressing how excited she was that we were going to quote-unquote do stuff together, my bad. In fact, she was so hyperactive she said she had to, and I quote, run around the house a few times before we continued. I felt like she was being really weird. Why would you need to exhaust yourself before you... exhaust yourself? To calm your excitement. Dumbass! Regardless of my inability to understand, I agreed to wait while she burned off her energy. I mean, either way, I felt incredibly lucky to do that with her. It could wait. When she returned to my room, she got mostly undressed, so she was left with only black underwear and a purple tank top. It was kind of funny, as the whole time she was still breathing heavily from running around outside. She went to rest on my twin bed, and I joined her. We went slowly the first time around. I listed every concern she had, and we progressed at her pace. Lies? The 2 times after it was a bit more intense, especially after we decided to go unprotected. The only reason I, a woman by birth, who identifies as non-binary, would go for unprotected sex is if I was on birth control, Or if I only had one sexual partner and was okay with the potentiality of getting pregnant. We moved together. It was incredible being this close to someone I trusted. Now, when people talk about making love, they often warn people about the dangers of getting pregnant. Well, you're from a woke state, Greg! So I don't know about that. Well, she's not on birth control or anything, so I guess we're both prepared for the long haul. I don't really care. If she got pregnant, I'd be proud. We get it, Greg. You have a breeding kink. Will you please? Shut the fuck up. That's what I'm programmed to be, right? Pride and love are the strings of puppets. We can pretend they don't control us, but anyone who gives their life a serious look can see we're not dancing because we chose to. The strings control us all. Oh, Greg, you're so deep. I'm such a fool, and I'm so foolish that it feels like a good thing. And that's chapter 6. I'm probably gonna need some more alcohol. I can feel myself sobering up, and I promised myself I'd read 2 chapters tonight. Well, I'll see y'all next time. Mwah! Hey gang, it's me, Flowergothic, back with more alcohol. It's a local brewery this time with around 4.5% alcohol by volume. It says recycled. Damn it! Which I think is what is it? Is it Frenchish? I don't know, I don't care. I need alcohol to get through this shitty novel. But I promised myself I'd read 2 chapters tonight, so I'm gonna read 2 chapters tonight, damn it! So, chapter 7. Blood means nothing. Something pretty awful happened. What, this whole book? For as long as I can remember, there has been a significant amount of stress and hostility between my father and I. Something had to break eventually, right? I'll try to use as much detail as I can, because I wasn't able to before, and it all should be written down, because of course it should. He's a fucking narcissist. Last Friday, I was on the way to my redneck aunt's house. I was in the backseat of my dad's car with the oversized sack of potatoes he calls a girlfriend, because I can finally admit that she's fat. Somehow, I don't know why he couldn't admit it before. In the passenger seat, I wanted to spend the weekend with Ashley, but my dad's stupid Jabba the Hutt girlfriend, brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department, wanted to go spend the weekend at my aunt's house. Okay. I read that Newsweek article about Onision's father and how they went on a road trip that Greggy Poo didn't want to go on because his girlfriend. He wanted to spend time with his girlfriend. And I guess this is what this chapter is supposed to represent, so I'm gonna assume there's going to be a physical altercation, and Arthur Reed Lindefeld is going to end up in GV Hall by the end of this chapter. Let's see if that is indeed the case. My dad, being the horrible father he is, prioritized the wishes of his girlfriend over me. His decision screwed over Ashley too. The person I care about 100 times more than both my dad and his genital puppet combined. Obviously, I was pretty upset, and I'm gonna need more alcohol for this. So I'm stuck in this car, driving far from my amazing girlfriend. Brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department. While the double-chinned idiot sitting in the passenger seat wears a smug grin painted across her face. even though she hasn't really interacted with me before because I thought she realized that she can never replace my mom, and I'm destroying my hat, I shouldn't do that. She is so proud of feeling more important than a man's own offspring. Only a fat, self-absorbed, stuck-up princess wannabe troglodyte would take satisfaction in a man betraying his own children.
Or child.
For a 1 out of 10 paper bag girlfriend like her. Why did I even have to go? Was my father being such a whipped idiot? Because you're trying to process some bullshit you did as a teen, I'm guessing. That was in a recent, as of this recording, Newsweek article that I'm going to link in the description below. Sober Flowergothic, please remember to do that. I'm counting on you, baby! So I'm blasting my music on my headphones and my father is smiling like a fool. He was no doubt off in some bizarre world surrounded by thoughts about how much better than everyone he is for having his religion. His don't eat the chicken, but eat the chicken menstruation, what the fuck diet, and his ugly frog-like girlfriend. Sitting in the backseat thinking about them was burning me up inside. I had to do something to drown the thought of them out, and yes, to annoy them. I turned my music up to the maximum level. I'm gonna put my hat aside, I don't want to destroy it. This very same music basically consisted of screaming about how my dad's God didn't exist and how stupid everyone who followed that God was. So basically new atheism. At some point, my dad asked me to turn down my music, but I ignored him because I'm a prissy bitch, and this is exactly what happened in the Newsweek article. He asked again, and I ignored him. He clearly didn't know what to do, because I'm a bitch. He kept looking at his walking pile of fat crotch puppet vagina with legs, as if he was worried she would judge him for whatever he did or didn't do in regards to my blasting music. I could see his girlfriend giving him my father concerned looks in response to my blaring music. He had to do something to establish he was still the alpha male, the chap in the car. God forbid he rise above. As a desperate last resort, my father pulled off to the side of the road in front of a gas station and asked loudly and clearly, "What is your problem?" I had no filter or any concern for anyone's feelings in that car because I'm a narcissistic asshole. I replied, "It's your fat, ugly, snob girlfriend that always gives her way, that's my problem." I've never seen my father so violent. As his face turned red with rage, my father lunged at me, choking me. I said aloud in a distorted voice, "I can't breathe." He ignored me. I said again in an even more unstable and desperate voice, "I can't breathe." He again ignored me. Okay, I'm gonna pull up that Newsweek article so y'all know what I'm really talking about here when I'm saying that this is how Onision views a real interaction he had with his father and stepmother. And I'm gonna need some more alcohol for the rest of this scene, cause god fucking damn. Okay, here's the story. During a road trip to Nashville, he was listening to music and had it up very, very loud, even though he said he's listening to his red headphones, Randy said. I said, "Greg, please turn your music down," and he wouldn't do it. So I pulled off on the exit. I stopped, turned around, and said, "Greg, turn your music down. It's way too loud." And that's when he went off. He started screaming and was just gonna bolt. He was gonna leave. And so I turned around, unbuckled my seatbelt, and tried to reach and grab his shoulders to keep him from leaving. Debbie, The stepmother was trying to untie his shoes and he was kicking at me, broke my glasses, and bloodied my nose. So yeah, Grunky Poo, the infamous, she's really 17 and a half kind of man. Well, that's not in the right in this situation, so let's keep reading and see how he perceives the situation. I'm going to keep the Newsweek tab up just in case. I had little choice. My father was going to try and choke me by the shoulders till I passed out or died, because apparently he couldn't handle his abomination for a girlfriend being criticized without turning into an insane ape. I'm glad I got the alcohol. I had to make a decision in that moment. And it wasn't a hard one, as the path I took involved me being able to continue breathing. Fortunately, on that day, I was wearing my combat boots. So despite being pinned to the back seat with both his hands wrapped around my neck, I proceeded to pushing him off me with my foot. For good measure, I followed that with anywhere from 9 to 17 kicks to his chest, neck, and head. It was amazing how hard the back of his body hit the dashboard. The whole car shook as my leg launched from the back seat towards the dash, repeatedly connecting him with this helpless, oversized vegan body. I could have helped kicking her. Well, my goal wasn't to break anything, which is why I broke his nose. Just get him away from me. And sure, he stayed there. Yeah, keep telling that to yourself, Greg. Keep letting this book stuff be your justification for abusing your own parent.
あなたの腕時計が耳の後ろでカチカチ震えていました。抱きしめてくれたあの腕の強さを思うと
Quickly after he was half knocked out on the dashboard, his girlfriend jumped out of the car not knowing what to do. My father recovered as fast as he could and went to choke me yet again, only this time from the outside of the car where he had no dashboard to collide against if I decided to fight back once more. His bloated freak girlfriend felt more comfortable approaching the backseat passenger door opposite of my father now that I was again being choked. Once she grabbed my ankles and proceeded to try taking off my boots. Drinking game for this chapter. Every time something similar to the Newsweek article happens, take a sip from your... Actually, this is a local company and I don't want them to sue me, so I'm not going to say it. Take a sip from whatever alcohol you're having. Okay? Okay. I wiggle my feet around to prevent her from making contact while saying, "You know, Dad, I would say I love Satan, but I don't believe in him." I felt ridiculous for saying that, but I knew he was obsessed with his God and wanted to demonstrate that if I was dumb enough to believe in a magical invisible being, it would be the one he feared most. His girlfriend continued to struggle with my wiggling feet as my dad responded, "Well, good. Really, Father? Your son being willing to say I love Satan if he actually believed in your religion was legitimate, was a well good situation? Really? I thought he said it was good. I thought you said it was good that you didn't believe in Satan. You retconning yourself, Onision?" I didn't realize it at the time, but blood was pouring from my dad's face after being kicked so many times. I only understood it later because I remembered he had to stop choking me at one point from the side of the car so he could go to the front and wipe his face on some napkins that were in the glove box. I mean the glove compartment, you son of a bitch. His girlfriend now had half of one of my boots untied, but because my dad was wiping his face in place of continuing to choke me, I took the opportunity to make a run for it. Take a sip. I sprinted to the other side of the gas station so they couldn't see me, but quickly quickly stopped running once a key question surged to the forefront of my mind. Where am I going to go? I had already driven so far away from anyone I knew. I had no money on me, and because of that, I felt I had no hope. Maybe you should have turned your music down, son. It was this sudden realization that brought me to tears. I gave up. I sat on the closest curb and cried. After only a couple minutes, a patrol car approached me and 2 police officers got out. Take a sip. I was so overwhelmed with adrenaline and emotion that I couldn't think clearly. All I could tell the cops was I thought he hit me. I didn't know at the time that my shirt was soaked in my father's blood. That sounds like something you should be aware of unless you're drunk as a skunk like me. I didn't even fully know what had just happened. I was just an angry kid whose father never really wanted him to be himself. I had a father that raised his kid to fail. He never told me to be whatever I wanted. My father never told me to be true to myself. He only told me to be like him, and when I wasn't, in so many ways he left me for dead, which is why I never elaborated on any of the moments that make me think he did that. One of the 2 officers told me to stand up and turn around. He slipped the cuffs on me. As the cuffs, brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department, were locked around my wrists, I cried, "Why are you arresting me? He hit me." Take a sip. I still wasn't even clear-minded enough to articulate the difference between hit and choke. The officers ignored me. How could they pay attention to anything I had to say? Choke marks don't show up as easily as someone's bit in your face. I'm spitting everywhere. Shit. He was a broken and bleeding man. I was just the kid with blood on his boots and a blood-drenched shirt. I was taken to juvenile hall. Take a sip. I spent the entire weekend there as the judge only worked on weekdays. Brought to you for no reason whatsoever. I sat in the cell playing the event over and over again. Every other thing I said after the incident was a mistake. If only I could have clearly explained myself to the police officers, except I was on adrenaline, but my chemically destroyed brain scrambled my thoughts and made me senseless. Like how I am now. This may surprise most, but in that cell I felt safe. I felt happier than I had in my own home. A prison cell felt more welcoming than living 2 doors away from my father. I knew in that cell I didn't have to look at his obnoxious girlfriend and see his disappointed face. All I really did through my time in juvenile hall was push-ups, play cards with the other inmates, and smile. My father was there to get me out the Monday that followed. He had a black eye and his entire eyeball itself was red. I must have busted the eyeball itself. ... Good. Take a sip. Goddamn, I'm running out. The judge let me walk cause I guess my father didn't press charges. I mentioned my father attacked me first to multiple people, but no one really cared. They only cared what he had to say, because he's a reasonable man trying to raise a son after his wife died. I was just the property of my father to them because you're a minor. Legal slaves, that's all the government treats kids like. And you wonder why I hate you people. When I got home, I quickly realized my father had accessed my computer while I was locked up, because apparently he drove all that way from Nashville all the way back to Canada, which I'm pretty sure takes at least I don't know, an hour? Probably at least an hour. The last it opened down on my journal files, because I don't keep them in a book because I'm an absolute dumbass. Should he had in fact looked at everything I said up to this point, he knew everything I wrote. Who cares, right? It's like I said, I'm a legal slave to him just like every other kid is to their parents. Take a sip, you're being a bitch! I'm surprised I haven't spilled alcohol on myself yet. We don't have rats! We're just property! I even confronted my father about it. Dad, can you come in here? I yelled down the hall. He came to the room and said in his normal Ned Flanders-like tone, "What's up, Arthur? How diddly-do-diddly?" I looked at him with a blank face and asked, "Did you access my computer?" It didn't take more for a second for my father to decide to blatantly lie to me. He said, "No, I didn't." I had no patience. I screamed at him, "I know you looked at my files!" I looked him right in the eyes and watched him continue to lie to me. It took me showing him the dates he accessed my computer on the screen itself for him to admit he accessed it. Brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department. Take a sip. I had never felt less respect for him than in that moment. Him reading my journal meant he knew more than he ever deserved. And you know what he did with that info? Nothing. He didn't change. He didn't have any reason to. He didn't try to be there for me or turn me around. All my father did was leave me alone in my room after I proved him a liar. We haven't spoken about anything meaningful since. Wait, when was this written? Like a week after the incident? I don't fucking know. Where's the self-righteousness now, Dad? Where's your invisible friend to save the day? Your family is falling apart, your girlfriend remains a freakish bullfrog creature, and you're still just another carbon copy simpleton occupying yet another carbon copy home on a carbon copy street in a carbon copy town in Canada. And you're still praying for me, Father? Because things keep getting worse? Maybe you aren't praying hard enough. Oh, man. Well, that's chapter 7, y'all. And it looks like it's gonna be my longest chapter yet. Fucking raw. Anyway, I'm gonna finish this video, take a shower, and then fucking pass out. So, bye for now, I guess. Hello, fuckers. It is I, Madame Goth, your goth mother, Flowergothic. And to be honest, I actually had to check my recordings to see what chapter we're on. So, we're on chapter 8, apparently, of This Is Why I Hate You by Onision. I feel like the fact that very little has happened in these past, 40 pages shows just how I can't remember anything. Like, didn't last time, Greg attack his father and leave a car? I was also drunk when I read that, so that might also help. But I'm sober. It's 1 p.m. I'm not sad enough to day drink. So chapter 8, here we go. Chapter 8. I have no future here. My life is more often than not a series of tragic events, isn't it? I mean, not really. You've mostly caused all of this yourself because you're an asshole. Me being like so many other people, I speak up in the most when something goes wrong. And today is no different. My little fragile life feels like it's falling apart more than ever before. Oh boy, do we finally get some plot? Principal Lee, man, found out I was sent to juvenile hall and used that as an excuse to expel me? I'm pretty sure that's against the law to do that. Sure, you might be reprimanded for going to juvie hall, but I don't think that's the adult thing to do. on my dad's voicemail, he said, "Mr. Linfield, your son was already on probation at school. His recent arrest has prompted me to expel him. I warned your son what happen if he got into any further trouble. The items in his locker will be mailed to the address listed in his file." Brought to you for no reason whatsoever. Now my dad refuses to acknowledge me beyond moments where verbal communication is an absolute necessity. It's really not that much of a loss considering he barely cared in the first place. My girlfriend Ashley is still supportive as always. She is basically the only person in my life who is even remotely kind to me these days, because she's a submissive doormat. It's been more difficult to find an opportunity to see her now that my father is worried I'm going to get her pregnant. Well, we know that you don't like wearing condoms, Greg. We know you have an impregnation fetish, Greg. So your dad's worries are justified, Greg. He was extremely lenient because he had no idea we were intimate. Him reading my journal changed the entire vibe in the house. All the murderous thoughts I expressed having earlier I'm sure didn't help. But you know what? I don't care. This is who I am. I'm not going to pretend and live a lie like my father does. There is plenty of ugliness in me. I could deny it and act like all will be forgiven by some magical being, or I could just own it. The second option is undeniably more honest. Yeah, I might be a manipulative psychopath with thoughts about murdering all my classmates, but at least I'm being honest about it. Therefore, I am the more justifiable human being. Whenever I'm around my dad, it always feels like an ongoing passive-aggressive battle. My father, being as religious as he is, refuses to directly admit I've slept with someone out of wedlock. His magical book strictly forbids that, after all. I mean, that really depends on what interpretation of the Bible you're reading. That's it. I don't even have like a quip for this. That's all there is to it. Sad thing is, I've slept with my girlfriend more times in the last month than he has with his girlfriend, ever. Pretty sure my orgasms bring me more joy than his religion ever brought him as well. You're putting a lot of emphasis on the sex here. Are you trying to tell us something, Greg Arthur? It must be awful, laying next to that useless sack of lard, not having the courage to break up with her, all the while not getting any action either. What a joke. You don't understand, Dad. She's not my real mom. Break up with her. My father will say things like, maybe you shouldn't spend as much time with Ashley. I'm always like, what not, father? You know, in exactly the condescending, why not, father tone anyone who thinks their dad is a total idiot would use. My father then will say something like, because you need to focus on your future. What that really means, coming from him, is I read your journal where you said you don't use condoms with your girlfriend. Called it, bitches! Called it! But I'm going to still pretend like I never read it, despite me already admitting I did when you caught me red-handed. So if you could just not be around Ashley for a reason I'm willing to say aloud and maybe wake up one day loving the same God I do, that would be great, idiot. I mean, you're sleeping with your girlfriend without any protection. Sure. Ashley may be on birth control. Who knows? But still, impregnation is a serious risk here. Despite everything, Ashley and I are intimate literally every chance we could get. Whenever and wherever we could tear each other apart, we take it. I'm not even kidding. My life is falling apart and I barely care, so as long as my body is crashing against hers. Considering I'm expelled, there's a small part of me that still lives in reality and is concerned about my future. Thankfully, this little voice adjusts as I get a GED. I think my first goal is the good enough degree, and after that, the military. I don't necessarily love the idea of dying for my country, but it's a great alternative to being stuck with my father and his rotten, hairless, albino moose of a girlfriend. Rude. Though, funny story, I actually read once that guys joining the military is the male equivalent of, fuck it, I'm gonna be a stripper. Which is true, sadly. I haven't spoken to Ashley in depth about my plans to join the military. She doesn't seem like the kind of person to just let me go. If I do successfully make it into the armed forces, I think I'd want her to go with me, but I have no idea how that would even work. I actually don't know either, so I can't help you there. Google it! Someone who kind of got me into the military idea is Ashley's brother, Thomas. He's younger than her, but he has plans of joining himself. Thomas told me, So long as I get a GED, I could actually get a decent job in the Air Force so long as my ASVAB test scores are sufficient. It's a bonus that I would possibly get to go to college for free under the GI Bill once I get out. Wait, don't you have to be at least like 21 to get into the Air Force? I don't actually know. I'm not in a military family. I only have like one relative who has served, and that was a long time ago. So, let's see. Okay, to enlist, you cannot be younger than 17, 18 for GED holders, or older than 39 years of age. Okay. This all sounds pretty fantastic, considering it all points to me never having to see my father or his girlfriend again. What could possibly go wrong? To be technical, statistically, I won't wind up littered with bullets either, so there's that! You may wonder why I would never want to see either of my guardian figures ever again. Your father's girlfriend is not your legal guardian. Unless if she adopted you, which I doubt. I mean, you would if you haven't been paying attention at all this far. Regardless, some things have happened in my past that I haven't yet mentioned. You know, additional tragic stuff I warned you about before. Which we would have shown, but that would have led to character development. After getting expelled from my school, I found myself trying to get my mind off what a massive failure I had become. Every day Ashley was at school, I would sit alone in the darkness of the basement playing video games and watching reruns of lighthearted TV shows. You may say, but Arthur, I thought you were always motivated. Insert additional idiotic comment, I'm stupid and should shut up. Hey! But you're right, you should shut up. Beating my father half to death, followed by getting expelled, drove a semi-truck through my plans my entire life. All I have left is the military. What plans? You had no plans, except for trying to get your girlfriend pregnant. As for the madness that went down recently, the other night, I was called down to consume a meal that was prepared by Frogface, and I just happened to not be hungry. The dish, of course, was vegetarian. It wasn't even the bearable kind of vegetarian. Rather, the type of vegetarian food you eat that makes people wonder if there's something wrong with you. Let me elaborate on that. There are some vegetarian foods I find somewhat decent tasting. They're called vegetables. Then there are the fake cheeses vegans invented that taste essentially like your grandmother crapped into a jar of flour, sprayed it with a hose, put it in the oven, ran over it with her car, put it back in the oven, blended it up, put it under the sun to dry, and then slapped it on a veggie burger. First of all, that tangent was very unnecessary. And second off, there are some vegan cheeses that are actually delicious. Have you ever had vegan Gouda before? Vegan Gouda is fucking delicious. Do you understand where I'm coming from? I don't want to eat their fake cheese just because they want to try something different than cow pastry. Oh my god. Of course, someone with a spine would object. So I did. What happened as a result? Insanity. I sat at the table, took one look at the meal and asked, "Can I be excused? I'm not hungry." You know, because my father is a control freak whose kids have to ask him permission to leave a table once they've sat down. Jesus Christ. My father didn't like the idea of me leaving the table without eating the meal his abomination for a companion had prepared, so he commanded me to stay. I smiled politely as I could and said, "No, I was asking as a courtesy," and proceeded to attempt leaving the room. It was at that point, my father stood up just enough to pretend he was in control, but just out of my pathway to avoid the possibility of me deciding to beat the hell out of him once again. As I began to leave, he screamed out, "Call the cops!" to his girlfriend. She immediately proceeded to phone in the kitchen and began dialing. I reacted in shock. "Are you serious?" No adult would behave like this, ever. With a nervous expression, my father looked back at me in silence. I could see fear in his eyes. His hands weren't shaking. He wasn't whimpering. But he was clearly terrified of round two with his meat-eating atheist son. "You're going to call the cops on your son for not wanting to eat a meal?" I asked, scoffing at their awful parenting. I complied with their demand that I stay in the dining room for the moment. I was eager to watch the cops rip them apart for wasting their time or something so trivial. After a few minutes, the doorbell rang. Me being ignorant about how the world really works, I assumed the cops would be completely on my side. My father explained to them that I refused to eat the meal they prepared, which is why they called the cops. The police officer my father spoke to looked at me and asked me, because no one acts like a professional in this book, "What's your problem?" I couldn't believe it. It was such a painfully familiar question. I tried to encourage the outcome I initially expected by saying to the officer, "It seems like they're wasting your time by calling you about a kid not wanting to eat dinner." The officer responded, You have a bad attitude, kid. We're here to straighten you out if you need be. Do we need to take you in? What the fuck is wrong with this town? Jesus Christ, no one would do this. No one. The officer glared at me intensely as if he was about to whip out his baton and pummel me. I felt like I was living in some crazy alternate reality where nothing makes sense and everyone around me plays my completely different rules that have no consistent logic or justification. I felt frozen in my silence. I didn't want to believe a cop would really just threaten to arrest a kid for not eating his goddamn dinner. That's it though. That's reality, and I had to accept it. I repeated what the officer said again and again in my mind. My conclusion? Yeah, the cop really just asked what I thought he asked me. Because no one acts like a professional in this book. He was really going to arrest me over not eating a meal just because my biological sperm donor ordered me to. I stood there silently looking at the ground. The officer warned me if there were further issues, they'd take me in right away. I had never felt like a piece of property more than I had in that moment. I wasn't their child. I was a dog to them, and if I didn't obey, it was the kennels for me. Once the officers left, I wasn't even told to eat the food. Once they closed the front door, I literally walked upstairs and went to bed. And nothing. After all that, they didn't even bother trying to remind me to sit at the table and eat the meal. They called the cops all so they could wind up complying with my wishes. I don't think it was because they were suddenly out of nowhere being respectful of what I wanted as if I was an equal human being. Really? They were probably just sick of my face. My father was already terrified of me. Maybe sitting across from me at this point would just ruin his appetite. Spelled incorrectly. There was no future for me in that household. I had to leave, and the military was my only way out. Fuck it, I'm gonna be a stripper. I would do most anything to make this happen. It will happen. Okay, that's chapter 8. Holy fuck. Gotta go now. I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye. Mwah. Well, hey guys, it's Flowergothic. Welcome to Chapter 9 of This Is Why I Hate You by Onision. And I checked to see how long it is, and it's an absolute doozy. It's like, it starts on page 46, and it ends on page 54, so. But it looks like, let me specify, it looks like a shit ton of exposition, so. We're in for a treat, kids! So without further ado, Chapter 9. Faith in humanity is just another religion! So I read over this journal a bit, and it's pretty clear I've been a pretty depressed pain in the butt. You were a pretty depressed psychopath at that. If you're reading this, you're probably confused as to why the sudden change. Well, the situation has changed. A lot has happened since I wrote the last entry, so I'll help you catch up. Which you would have shown, but that would have led to plot to wait, no, actually. It would have just been even slower, never mind. I did wind up getting my GED and applying to join the military. Ashley wasn't happy with me wanting to join, so she basically acted like if I decided to run off to basic training, she would consider that me leaving her. Well, you basically broke her spirit, and you made her practically dependent on you, so of course she's gonna see it that way. Despite Ashley's feelings, I had only one decision to make. I had to choose between being around a crazy father 40% of my day, and only seeing my girlfriend maybe 10%, or I could choose to have a job and likely never see either of them again. I chose to walk, and since I made that decision, I've completely lost touch with Ashley. You would expect me to be more broken up than I am, but she went cold on me the moment I confirmed I was leaving. It was like the second the words left my lips, she erased everything about me in her mind, and suddenly I was no one. It was mental. Well, again, you practically made her submissive on you, so without you, what does she have to live for? Regardless, I already went through MAPS, Military Entrance Processing Station, and I'm pretty glad that's over considering that was one of the most significant aspects of me processing into the military. I'm sure there's a better way to state that. While I was in the processing station, brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department, I witnessed a lot of human failure. It was an interesting experience seeing grown men cry because they didn't have the depth perception to be pilots. Some of the men weren't physically strong enough to even be considered for any job at all. They even denied people for having blood pressure level they didn't like. I understand being upset about being rejected entirely, but some guys were sobbing over the fact that they just couldn't get the specific job they wanted. Life for a lot of people seems to be about not appreciating what you have and always wanting more. Which is why I asked my girlfriend to turn goth. If the same guy who failed the vision test and cried actually passed it, he would no doubt have another episode down the line. Maybe it would be some other testing fail, or some administrative decision that denied his wishes to fly the specific type of plane he wanted. Self-assigned victims will always be victims. I don't want to call him pathetic because I'm trying to be more positive, but my hate runs deep and I can't feel sorry for people who go out of their way to feel sorry for themselves. I am Onion, and therefore I am superior to all of these losers. Once I was through maps, it wasn't long before they had me sitting at the airport waiting to fly south. All the new recruits gathered at the entrance of our plane. We usually identified each other somehow. Maybe it was the look of dread we carried, knowing the next couple of months of our lives were going to wreck us. We were all probably running from something. The strong desire to flight is so consuming. Fuck it, I'm gonna be a stripper. No matter what our reasons for being there was, I'm pretty sure my family dysfunction had them all beat. Yeah, your family dysfunction, your loving father, who just wants the best for his son. Yeah, I could see that. When our plane landed in Texas, no one was there to greet us. We had to follow signs in the airport just to get to the waiting area designed specifically for military members. The room was insanely crowded already. Their schedule was specifically targeted at us arriving in the middle of the night, in part so that meeting the training instructions for the first time would be twice as terrifying. I doubt that. Something about hearing screams of pure rage at 1 a.m. cuts deeper through your skin than screams accompanied by sunshine. It's just mental terrorism 101. Thanks for that, military psychopaths. After we were guided like mindless cattle onto the buses arriving in a seemingly endless line just outside the airport, we were driven directly to our training facility at the local base. Each bus was welcomed by the screams of sociopaths and people who were no doubt never hugged as children. After waiting for about 30 minutes outside, they directed the group of 40 or so trainees with me into a small classroom. Once we were inside, they verified our individual identities and assigned us flight numbers. After this process was complete, we were called out by the flight number brought to you by the Redundancy Department. God, this is making me jumble up my words. We were given, and from that point, we were directed to our new homes. These facilities were essentially composed of one massive room shared with 60 other trainees. I could complain, but it's exactly what I expected. As training progressed, I quickly realized that I had abusive training instructors. Fuck it, I'm gonna be a stripper. Wait, why is everyone being so abusive towards me? I know this because shortly after I graduated, one of the T's who lead our flight, Sergeant Johnson, was demoted for punching a trainee in the face. She regularly took things too far. It didn't help that she knew how to abuse us mentally, physically, and emotionally. Most training instructors would leave the heart alone, but for Sergeant Johnson, emotional abuse was her primary function. And we would have shown more about her, but that would have led to character development. When I first saw Sergeant Johnson, I thought she was a gorgeous little firecracker of a woman, because I can't help but see women as objects. She was about 5 feet tall, had an enormous amount of freckles and red hair. As we had the energy or privacy to gratify ourselves at night while in training, we would no doubt all be doing it to her. But the fantasy with my training instructor only went as far as my ignorance of her true nature. The woman turned into a monster, and not the kind you would expect from a drill sergeant. Let's dive into an exact scenario. I'm not going to complain about how this might not be how the Air Force works, because first of all, Onion did serve in the Air Force, and second off, I have not. So, I guess this is just a novelization of his own perception of what happened. Let's leave it at that. We were a couple weeks into training, and I was almost entirely alone in the sleeping area. Most of the other trainees elected to attend a church that fit their religious beliefs that day. I had no beliefs, and refused to go to any church. Sergeant Johnson had to stay behind with us and basically babysit due to us not being willing to go pretend to love any god. As I was cleaning my locker by my bunk, Sergeant Johnson screamed, "Trainee Linfelt!" I screamed back, "Trainee Linfelt reports!" Sergeant Johnson stood at the entrance with another female military member and angrily stared in my direction. "Get over here and lay on your back immediately!" she screamed at me. In basic, you're taught not to think for yourself. You're taught to do exactly as they instruct, otherwise you'll be punished through paperwork or forced exercise. I moved to the ground in front of the two women as they commanded. Sergeant Johnson then called over the other trainees and instructed them to do the same. Despite us only being feet away from her, she screamed as if we were still across the room, "Put your feet and hands straight up in the air, trainees!" We all proceeded to put our feet and hands, brought to you by Department of Redundancy Department, in the air. Wave them like we just don't care. It was at that point she started chuckling to the other female drill sergeant. She said, and I quote, "See, that's called a dead cockroach. That's what I was talking about." The sergeant made us hold that position for a good 3 to 5 minutes. If you've never achieved the position I'm referencing, I encourage you to. It's likely the only way you'll understand how painful it can be. It's actually ridiculous how many exercises positions can quickly become intensely painful. I've read the Kama Sutra, I know how it works. If you just push slightly farther than you're used to. However, the dead cockroach wasn't even an exercise. It was humiliation. I don't really care that she called us idiots when we did it. I wasn't worried about feeling treated as if I was a piece of property. I was used to that by now. My main focus was to not upset the T's, more important than they already were. I could never allow myself to be the weakest link, as the moment I fell on the line, I would be washed back and possibly have to repeat an entire week of basic. At one point in basic, brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department, due to my failure to maintain my composure, I was forced to point and laugh at the other trainees as they did push-ups. "I am sick and tired of you morons screwing up day after day," the male technical sergeant in charge of our entire flight screamed. "You're embarrassing the Air Force, you're embarrassing me, and you're no doubt humiliating the very vaginas you were born from." Hearing him say that caused me to let out a slight but noticeable burst of laughter under my breath. It was one of the stupidest things I had ever heard a person say. Unfortunately for me, the tech sergeant heard my slip up and marched towards me, so he could scream in my face, "All right, trainee Lindfeld, how about you stand over there?" He pointed just to the right, where the entire flight was standing in formation, okay? As I marched over to the spot he pointed at, he commanded my fellow trainees to right face. The sergeant then commanded them to get into push-up position and immediately instructed me to point at all of them on the ground. The tech sergeant said sternly, "Trainee Lindfeld, you will laugh at them and remind them they are pushing because of you." I was trying so hard not to lose it again on the tech sergeant with laughter. He could see I was amused, so he marched over to me and got in my face once more. "Do you want to be washed back? Do you want to repeat the entire last week with another flight?" he asked in a low, angry tone. At that moment, I almost instantly lost all amusement from the situation. I absolutely despise wasting hard work. If I continued my attitude, I would be screwing myself. So I proceeded to, saying aloud in a monotone voice, "Ha ha ha, you're all pushing because of me." The drill sergeant was pleased. "Good, continue!" He screamed in a voice that could make the average person think he was losing his mind. "Ha ha ha, you're all pushing because of me." I said again, "Good, scream it, trainee Lindfeld." The training instructor said with an increasingly large grin on his face, "Ho ho ho." "Oh, ha ha ha, you're all pushing because of me," I screamed as I stared at all the trainees doing push-ups. God, this formatting is terrible. They were clearly getting more and more angry with me as the pain in their arms intensified. It was in that moment the reality of my situation sank in. I personally liked doing push-ups. The more I did them, the more I could do. That's how exercise usually works. It was incredible to watch my arms essentially level up. These trainees obviously did not feel the same as I did. I had seen people in movies that were killed by their fellow man for less than what I was actively doing to my peers. Just looking at their faces shaking, turning red, their eyes locked on me as they pushed. It was one of the few moments in my life that changed me. We're almost there. I am living amongst animals that know their emotions more than basic reasoning. These were animals that could only see what was in front of them, and in their haze of anger they didn't have even a slight idea of what was over the horizon. It was the instinct-driven, intellectually bankrupt animal mentality so many of my peers embraced, and for that I learned to always fear them. How can I possibly trust these raging idiots? I'm often a person who plans before he acts. If I want something done, I rarely do it in the moment. That's why I punched my dad in the face when he was trying to take my Walkman away. I lay it all out and proceed when I am certain of success. It's only when I'm faced with extremes that I am forced to react without forethought. These children, in the bodies of men, were laying on their aching chests at my feet. ... They were performing such a simple exercise and it caused them to looked as murderous, I had ever seen anyone be. It was nothing like them. I was nothing like them. God, this is ridiculous. Scream it, Trainee Linfield, the T commanded. Ha ha ha, you're all pushing because of me. My yell was no longer monotone. The confident scream I had before was replaced by something weak and distorted. The instructor could see I was disturbed by what was happening. It was only then he commanded everyone to stand and reassume their formation at the position of attention. While my experiences in basic were not that significant, those select moments stood out to me. Those moments made me learn a lot about how easy it is to manipulate and control people, as if I didn't know already. Sergeant Johnson alone could write a book on emotional warfare. Every other weekend she was threatening to withhold letters from home. She would tell us one day we were amazing and the next day we were scum. These animals posing as airmen in training would take it out on each other. Not saying she was fabricating problems out of nothing just to make us squirm for her sadistic pleasure. The enjoyment Sergeant Johnson took out of putting us in the position of dead insects, torturing us by using gravity itself against us, the way my fellow trainees fell for every trick and trap along the way, some even breaking down, literally crying for their mommy. The only respect I had for anyone in that entire building was the tech sergeant. He showed me in a matter of minutes how quickly he could turn a group of men against me. It was something most people never learn. Men are weak, often able to be controlled by even mild influences. Most men I've known should not be trusted. I joined the military to escape the enemy in my home. But here, I found the world is full of people who are ready and willing to write you off over nothing. Maybe the hatred I expressed earlier in this journal wasn't so far off. Maybe I'm not becoming more mature, but simply losing my grip on reality. Probably. Escaping my father gave me hope, and like a new goldfish giving to a child, my hope is rapidly expiring. People say teenagers are stupid and out of touch with reality. But if our bodies die the more we age, what's to say we as people don't also die emotionally too? Are we really growing up? Or is that just a nice way of saying we're dying on both the inside and out? Okay, Jesus Christ. That was chapter 9. See you next time for chapter 10. God, Greg is slowly going insane. Bye! Hey gang, it's Flowergothic, and welcome to Chapter 10 of This Is Why I Hate You by Onision. And guess who has pissed off the third controversial entity this year? This motherfucker! But I'm not gonna fret about it right now. I've taken all the necessary precautions and I knew I was going to get into this. So, let's just read some terrible self-insert fanfiction. Chapter 10. Failure to perform! It's been a month now since I went through basic. The last entry was made during the first week of security forces training. Okay, this is something I didn't really think of until after I did the readings for chapters 8 and 9, but Arthur, weren't your first journal entries on a fucking computer? Have you switched to an official notebook now, or are you still using a military computer? And if that's the case, how come you haven't been psychologically evaluated yet? I feel like a train bound to metal tracks with only one destination, becoming a cop for the Air Force. My roommate, Airman Taylor, and that's his name, is obsessed with country music despite being from Minnesota. We don't judge here in Contraville. So why don't you shut the fuck up? He's a scrawny-looking brunette guy with brown eyes and pimples on his face, brought to you for no reason whatsoever. To save you from looking at a map, Minnesota is right by North Dakota and shares a border with Canada, my home. I just assumed most people who are into country music came from the South, considering the desert cowboy cliche. The Southwest is the desert, man. The South is grass and swamp. Some beach, but mostly swamp. I think it's pretty hard to be a cowboy and build a snowman at the same time. Regardless of the fact, he blasts his inbred music. Jesus Christ, what the fuck? On a regular basis, he seems like a pretty decent guy. Or that's my impression of him. As I learned before, most everyone is socially palatable, unless they have a significant reason to be otherwise. I bet if you offered my roommate $100 million to smother me in my sleep, he'd have done the first chance he got. Probably not, you pessimist. Humans seem sane because appearing to be that way serves us better than the alternative. We isolate, segregate, and demonize people whose behavior, spelled the European way just to prove that Arthur is Canadian, conflict with other members of society, and then act surprised when someone snaps. We find out someone randomly loses it. It has in fact been crazy the whole time, but of course, it came out of nowhere! When you create a closet and tell people if they hide their darker traits in it, everyone will accept them, you're going to have a full closet. What? However, the reality of the closet, brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department, is that it can only hold so much. One day, it may burst. I'm just saying, stop acting shocked when you find out someone you knew wound up being a nut job. You didn't try to connect with them and find out who they really were? Cause I, Dr. Greg Jackson, am the most accomplished psychoanalyst in the history of Earth. All you did was give them incentive to pretend to be like you. You built the ship, now sink with it! In the Freudian iceberg, yeah. Well. Regardless, I was able to call Ashley. Our conversation kind of went like this. Not spaced properly, so this is gonna be a good one. Hey Ashley, it's Arthur, I said in a hopeful voice. Ashley replied, who? Me being horrified by this response, I tried to remain calm and said again, Arthur, I haven't been gone that long, have I? Ashley paused and then said, oh, hi. I wouldn't forget the guy who took my virginity, Arthur. I just didn't expect you to call. I replied, yeah, well, I thought I should. She then said, oh, okay, in a tone that seemed completely disinterested. My emotions were telling me the full story. She had already moved on and had no desire to have any kind of future with me. Like a normal human. It's probably my fault considering the fact I made it clear I would never see my father again. I guess she just assumed I wrote the whole town off as well. Probably. I really thought the way she acted when I left was a phase and that she would miss me down the line. Seems I'm still unwanted. Oh yeah, it's just a phase, like your continuous, she's only 17 and a half phase, Onision. I followed up with, how's school? She replied, it's fine. I wish I got a GED early like you did so I could get out of here sooner. We sat in awkward silence on the phone for about a minute. I felt like I was sitting next to a dead house pet expecting it to come back to life. What the fuck? I didn't want to accept that something I cared about wasn't coming back. Brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department. I told Ashley she could email me if she ever wanted to talk, as I didn't have a consistent phone number yet. She said okay, then goodbye. Sadly enough, I think my father would have been happier to hear from me than her. Yeah, cause he was the one that, donated your sperm to your mother by intercourse. It seemed like such a long time since I last saw her, but I probably would have had a new girlfriend at that time if she were the one who left me behind. I don't blame her. In other news, I recently found out I'm a coward. No shit. One of the security forces instructors staged a hostage situation right in front of class. We were sitting in a pretty standard, more modern classroom in the middle of a security forces training building when a man burst through the door of our class pointing a gun at our instructor while repeatedly screaming, Sergeant Mason! Quickly after, the man stormed and he barked out a dialogue about military conspiracies. Why don't you tell them the truth about what's really going on in the government? Why don't you tell them the truth about what you people really are? The Illuminati! No surprise, the room full of security forces trainees did nothing. Because how the fuck would a random guy get through security in the military? The sad part is I was sitting only about 12 feet from the man holding the gun, and the only thing I did was zone out on the papers on my desk. I didn't try to fight him. I didn't try to alert anyone outside. I just sat there like a pathetic child waiting for his mommy to come save the day. He had a gun. I didn't. Even if I felt like being a hero in place of borderline soiling my underwear, I didn't see a chance for disarming the man. I'm sure you can learn how to do that on WikiHow. After what seemed like 5 minutes, the gunman lowered his gun, brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department, and started chuckling. Our instructor giggled to herself as well. We were obviously all confused, but our instructor quickly cleared things up. Well, that's unfortunate. I was hoping someone would try to stop him from blowing my brains all over the wall, Sergeant Mason said. The sergeant then thanked the makeshift actor for playing his part and revealed to us that the gun the actor was holding was a dummy. The barrel of his shiny silver weapon was welded shut, preventing anything from going in or out. The only way we could have seen this, however, was by looking down the chamber itself, brought to you for no reason whatsoever. The most humiliating moment was when Sergeant Mason turned to me and said, "Airman Lindfeld, you were right there. What were you doing?" I responded, "I was trying not to escalate the situation. He was far enough away for me to get a shot off before I could tackle him. I didn't want to make things worse." I said it with such confidence, but inside I felt like a failure. What I said was both the truth and a lie. Sure, I was probably right about the probability of successfully wrestling away a gun without getting shot, but I'd take being wrong and brave over a coward and right. It's the principle of the matter. This world is full of people who are too afraid to face corruption and death head-on. Wow, Greg, you're so deep! The same people would watch a father violate his own children and do nothing for years and years. Holy fuck, this is so fucked up. If everyone stood up and fought in situations like these, would they still arise? If you knew 20 people would tackle you the moment you pulled out a gun, be honest, what are the chances you would ever do it? My life is meaningless, but my existence can have more significance than this cowardly state if I let it. What I just went through proves how basic and irrelevant I am to this day. I will never stand by and watch someone become a victim again. How ironic. Well, that was chapter 10. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye. Mwah. And we're back! Hey guys, it's Flowergothic. Welcome to chapter 11 of This Is Why I Hate You by Onision. In my head, I keep thinking it's Stones to Abigail because, you know, it's about the same writing quality. Maybe worse, maybe better. I don't know. I don't care. I just want to get this over with. So, without further ado, we have chapter 11. In Hell with an Angel! While the dorms are a miserable place, I've met a pretty amazing girl named Corey Jeffries, or Airman Jeffries as I'm supposed to call her. Brought to you for no reason whatsoever. I went through a suicide/homicide prevention course recently, and was one of the only people to pass it. How? Apparently, I'm one of the few people in the military who has the ability to show compassion for people about to kill themselves. Oh, fuck you, Greg. Surprise, right? Most of us are just mindless morons who practically wreck our pants at the idea of having the opportunity to shoot someone. Now ask these people about the human side of war. Prepare to see countless military members go brain dead before your eyes. Why did you join the Air Force again, Greg? Oh, yeah, because it's the male equivalent of fuck it, I'm gonna be a stripper. Corey was a cute short girl with brown eyes and dyed blonde hair. She was discouraged by the military dress code from having dyed hair, but she clearly didn't care. And they didn't enforce the dress code, like, at all. She was assigned my partner in digitally rating these homes with pre-recorded scenarios. I guess it was after our experience that she decided she wanted to be my friend. We would show you what that would have been like, but that would have led to character development, which, as we all know, is illegal in an Onision fic. We were basically two human beings surrounded by mindless drones. How can we not gravitate towards one another? In the training event, each airman was called up to stand next to a projector with their dummy guns and observe the screen. This felt a lot like playing a video game, like Time Crisis in the arcade. That's such a specific reference. Like, thank God I know what Time Crisis is. Because I'm pretty sure his fan base has no idea. I watched student after student fail to get the suicidal digital characters they face to drop their weapons. That's what happens when you treat people on the verge like they're rabies-infected dogs. The computer-controlled video would take the trainees through a house straight into a room, and the same guy would be on his bed with a gun to his head. As soon as the airman saw him holding a gun, regardless of how his obvious suicidal condition, they in response would just scream over and over again, "Drop the gun! Drop the gun now!" Someone was even stupid enough to say, "Drop the gun or I'll shoot!" And everyone in the room reacted with either laughter or angry scoffs. Holy fuck. It was clear the student threatening someone with a gun to his own head offended our traitor. Sergeant Mason asked in an angry tone, "You would shoot someone pointing a gun to themselves?" The student replied, "No, I'm sorry, Sergeant." The words fell on deaf ears. We were still incredibly disgusted with the stupidity it took to even consider threatening someone already wanting to die. It was my turn to go up. Corey stood next to me and aimed her weapon at the screen. The projector took us through pretty much the same scenario. The same man had a gun on his side. I was glad to see the gun wasn't to his head yet. I began to talk to him as if he were really right in front of me. "Sir, we're here to make things right. How can we resolve this?" I asked. I could hear Sergeant Mason clicking away at her computer mouse, no doubt selecting the next path was the scenario to take. My wife left me and I want to die! The man on the projector screamed. He lifted the gun to his head. Crap, right? I thought I was doing well, but clearly I needed to adapt. The man before me wore black shorts and a white tank top. He was slightly heavier, middle-aged, and ungroomed, brought to you for no reason whatsoever. It wasn't my job to remind him of how lazy he appeared or what a mess his house was. Clean a room, bucko! When someone's about to jump, you don't push them. You do everything you can to pull them back. I quickly said, "Sir, you have so much to live for. Please don't do this. We want to help you." Hearing this, Corey then chimed in, "Please put down the gun. It'll be okay." I heard Sergeant Mason click away yet again. The man then said, "I have nothing to live for. I'm gonna do it." I felt slightly offended the computer didn't register what I just said. But it wasn't state-of-the-art equipment, so what can you do? I refused to let him give up like this. I wasn't willing to accept failure. I responded to the man, "You have so much to live for. This situation is temporary. You can be happy again. Don't make this mistake." Corey remained silent next to me as we both looked on in awkward silence. The man then said, Okay, I'm putting down the gun." And with that, we were the first 2 people out of the 14 or so that went before us to actually save the digital character. The room didn't offer applause. Everyone there simply remained quiet. The only real congratulations we got for being the first to save someone was a smile and nod from Sergeant Mason. It's silly in a way, but I felt really proud of myself for saving the character. It was like I wasn't just this useless coward I previously concluded myself to be. Glad to see that was resolved in like 1 chapter. Looks like I have a little bit of that ridiculous thing people call hope. Regardless, to my pleasant surprise, Corey and I have been pretty inseparable since. Lies. I always try to eat at her table in the chow hall, and she often goes out of her way to stand by me in formation. We were sitting in my dorm room the other day. "How old are you, Arthur?" Corey asked. "I'm 18, I said. I would have mentioned turning 18 earlier, but birthdays are pretty irrelevant to me. Why should I celebrate being 1 year closer to death? Brought to you for no reason whatsoever." Corey smiled and replied, "Well, I just turned 17. "Oh no." I asked, "Why did you join so early?" She giggled and replied, "I graduated early, wanted to be a lit major, but I couldn't afford college. You?" I felt incredibly awkward. I really didn't want to answer this question. Having a GED isn't really something to brag about, but I told her anyway. I got a GED after being expelled from high school for fights I had been in on and off campus. Corey sat back and said, "Wow, you're an uneducated troublemaker, aren't you?" Oh, fuck. Everyone either loves or hates Greg unconditionally. Holy shit. Fortunately, she said in a joking tone, otherwise I would have died a little inside. I replied, "Yeah, you could say that." She smiled and said, "I'm kidding. There's obviously a lot more to you. How'd your parents handle you joining up?" Great. Another question I didn't want to dive into at all. Just thinking about my father's reaction when I told him I was leaving made me feel sick. I didn't want to talk about my dad's excited look when he realized he didn't have to put up with me anymore. I didn't want to talk about how his girlfriend packed my things as soon as humanly possible and how ready they both were to say goodbye. The idea they never had to see me again clearly was the best thing that happened to them in some time. Lies. The response was expected, but somehow emotionally crippling. No, Corey had enough information to know the amount of truth she needed. I just wanted to hang out with Corey and forget about my other life, so I said, "Well, they're whatever. I'm here, that's all I care about." She smiled and replied, "I'm glad you're here, Arthur." I started blushing, only to try and wipe it away. Yeah, someone threw blush on his face, so he has to wipe it off. Not a lot of people showed such sincere interest in me. I felt so lucky to be around this girl. Side note, yes, I realize I'm softening up, but for Corey, it's what she deserves. I thought the military would make me an even more serious and domineering person. I was partially wrong. There's just something about most everyone around me being more miserable than I've ever been, mixed with being able to see Corey on a daily basis. This place, as so many describe as hell, has become an unexpected paradise for me. I feel like a lit match. When I'm surrounded by light, I'm worthless. In the dark, I thrive. This is where I belong. Okay. And that's chapter 11, y'all. So we have our real love interest now, Corey. Ashley was just the practice wife. So, yeah, I'll see you all next time. There's nothing else really to say about it. Bye. Mwah.
That's all, folks.